Well, Bob, we certainly can feel the enthusiasm here. We hadn't gotten to the last few stanzas of the Star-Spangled Banner before the crowd itself broke into a big roar. They're anxious to see this. This is a picture-perfect game, a beautiful day for lacrosse. Johns Hopkins with an opportunity to avenge their only loss this year to the University of Virginia down in Charlottesville on the AstroTurf. The University of Virginia, Ace Adams' third year, his first opportunity at Virginia to win an NCAA championship. Virginia, of course, won in 1972.
Looking now as Virginia breaks the huddle to go out for the traditional lineup. Both teams will face each other. The goalies will shake hands, and the game will be underway. A few more stats, Joe, just to bring up to date on the relative strengths of the teams. On extra man offense, Johns Hopkins hits on 48% of their opportunities. They're 52 of 109. Virginia only 37% of their opportunities, 36 of 98. Virginia, on the other hand, has fewer penalties, 73 for 55.5 minutes. Hopkins has committed 107 penalties for 88 minutes. This could be a factor in the game.
We see Brian Gregory, just as we suspected, is going to start for the University of Virginia. This is what Coach Henry Ciccarone thought the strategy of Virginia was going to be. Virginia, of course, uses two goalies. Johns Hopkins has two-time first-team All-American Mike Federico in the goal, and I think this game is going to be won or lost in the midfields today, Bob, as we look down now for the starting face-off.
Howie Offit facing off for Johns Hopkins and Steve Krause for Virginia. Offit rakes it back towards his own goal, as he does so often. Greenberg trying to pick it up, loses it inside to Caravana, and Caravana will control for Virginia, and they'll go on offense for the first time today. Johnny Driscoll with the ball, Johnny Driscoll now dropping in. Johnny Driscoll likes to shoot on the dead run, takes the ball back behind instead. Looking outside as Virginia likes to move the ball around a lot. Now inside, and a shot deflected nicely by Greenberg on a slide, out of bounds, but backed up, we see by number 13, Matt Rainis. And of course, Virginia will retain possession.
Of course, we remind our fans it's the player closest to the ball where it goes out of bounds on a shot that is awarded the ball. So we'll look for these attackmen to be backing the goal on most of these shots, and a lot of foot races between the attack and the goalies.
Johns Hopkins brings in three defensemen now to play midfield. Number 45 will be Marty Bergen. Number 24, Lance Schneck. And number 38 is Leroy Katz. The ball out front with number 20, Sonny Esposito, as Virginia starts to set up their offense. If you watch the attack, cutting in front of the goal, rosing around in front of the goal, trying to lose their man, as number 7, Rich Riccardi, comes in on a sweep. Riccardi now backs out, picked up by the man with a long stick, Marty Bergen. Bergen playing good defense. It makes it awfully difficult to penetrate when you have a man with a long stick on you and you're used to being played by a midfielder. They rosy it off now to John Driscoll. Driscoll, the key man on this offensive midfield for the University of Virginia. He drives in. He'll try to come back. He wards off and gets inside now, looking back out front. Hopkins playing very, very tight man-to-man defense. The ball back out front now to Rich Riccardi. He gives it over to number 20, Sonny Esposito. Esposito fires, got a weak shot, picked off by Federico. Federico gives it off quickly to Dave Black. Johns Hopkins will generally use an L clear, or they will use two men on the near side of the field to create a 2-on-1 and clear the ball on the near side of the field. We see now Greenberg calling for the play. On the near side of the field, we have Joe Saletti and Brendan Schneck.
Virginia in a deep ride, a very effective ride in that if you break up the clear, you've got a fast break toward your opponent's goal. On the other hand, in a deep ride, if the opposing team does make the clear, then you're really all back on defense and you don't yourself find yourself in a fast break situation. Virginia now in that deep ride.
Hopkins with a 2-on-1 on the near side. Ciccarone gives it off to Saletti. Overthrows Saletti. And picked off in there by number 9. That's Stevie Byrne. They get back in quickly to Natoli. He's on his way to the goal. He pulls out now and he gives it off to Mike Caravana. Caravana, Driscoll fires from here, fires wide of the goal on the right-hand side. A good shot. Driscoll trying to take the angle with Federico. It's backed up by Matt Rainis.
Virginia showing this traditional ball control that they have all year. I don't mean to say that they're stalling it by any stretch of the imagination, but holding the ball until they find an opening, looking for a good shot, and that's the way they've managed to stay in so many games this year.
Matt Rainis brings it in now, picked up by Dave Black. Gives it off to Randy Natoli as Natoli pulls off the crease to set up the offense. Now over quickly to Billy Siri. Siri cradles once. Siri will try to drive in, get the double team. He pulls out as Marty Bergen picks him up. Bergen, the big defenseman, playing midfield as Johns Hopkins substitute on the fly. Back over to Natoli. Virginia, very patient offensive team. Over to Siri now. Back over to Rick Justo. The Justo brothers are twins. Rick, number 16, Ray, number 19. Ray coming in now, trying to take Lance Schneck. Comes inside, he has a shot from there. He's double teamed. Gives it off to Siri. He loses the ball. Flipped out by number 38, Leroy Katz. Kept back in play nicely by Tony Savarese. Have a push call coming up, I believe, Joe.
That's going to mean the ball will stay with Virginia. Virginia now controlling the ball extensively. 12 minutes and 2 seconds remaining in this, the first period of the NCAA Division I championship. Johns Hopkins has not had a shot on goal. Virginia has controlled the ball the whole way.
Number 4, Lou Rulin, replacing Billy Siri on offensive midfield for the Cavaliers of Virginia. Rulin, one of the top goal getters at midfield for the Cavaliers. He gives it off now to Reynes. Reynes driving in on Dave Black. Black very, very steady though, pushes him back out. And they give it off to Rulin. Rulin stands slowly and gives it off to Ricky Justo. Justo coming back out as Leroy Katz picks him up. Roses it off to Rulin. Nice check by Marty Bergens. He checks the ball away from Rulin as Rulin was jogging kind of slowly. Ball rolling loose. Kicked back out as Virginia controls. Now they lose control. Picked up nicely by Dave Black. They get it back to the goal area where Mark Greenberger picks it up in front of Federico, gives it off to Lance Schneck, and Johns Hopkins goes on offense for the first time.
And there should be a brief pause as Johns Hopkins now will substitute those defensive midfielders. In case you hadn't noticed, Johns Hopkins was using 6 defensemen, as we'll see them often do when they're on defense, and now they're substituting those men with a new offensive midfield.
On offensive midfield for Johns Hopkins, 18, Henry Ciccarone, 25, Brendan Schneck, the superstar, and number 12, Joe Sleddy. Schneck, they get it over out in front of the goal. Schneck will come back and probably fire from here. He does, and a goal, the first goal of the game. Johns Hopkins scores an unassisted goal by Brendan Schneck with 12:55 remaining in the first quarter. Johns Hopkins 1, Virginia nothing.
And that's the man that Virginia's going to have to stop in order to win this ball game. Brendan Schneck, an incredible number of goals, 44 this year, a transfer from the United States Naval Academy, and he has been nothing but outstanding for Johns Hopkins. Started out the season on attack. Henry Ciccarone decided that when he was on attack, that too many of the other players stood around, watched for Brendan to do something. He moved him to midfield, and since he's done that, Brendan has been outstanding.
Howie Offit once again facing off for Johns Hopkins, and Steve Krause for the University of Virginia. Ball rolling back towards the Hopkins goal, picked up by Wayne Davis, and he is knocked down on an outstanding hit by Sonny Esposito, and Virginia's on the way. Driscoll faces it off in a fast break. Inside, a beautiful save by Federico on a shot by Mike Caravana. The ball rolls, Federico has it, coming up the far side of the field. A great pass to Greenberg, and Greenberg's on his way down the field across the midfield line. Beautiful clear by Johns Hopkins, and a great save by Federico.
Mike Federico, a lot of people question whether he deserved first team honors again this year because he really hadn't been tested. But once again, he shows when the chips are down, he's the man of the hour.
The shot by Caravana was point blank as they give it off to Davis. Davis likes to shoot left-handed. He's coming back right, though. He has an angle. He fires and scores the second goal of the game for Johns Hopkins. The Jays are up now 2-0, 10-14 remaining in the first quarter.
And that's been the trademark of the Blue Jays this year. They don't need possession for a long period of time. They score very quickly when they have the ball. And we just saw them do it. Virginia practically dominated the first 3.5 minutes of the first quarter of this ball game. And then Hopkins got a hold of the ball for just 2 opportunities. And bang, bang, it's Johns Hopkins on top. 2-0 over the University of Virginia. 10 minutes and 14 seconds remaining in the first quarter.
Virginia now has changed goalies. They have replaced Brian Gregory with Joe Butner. Facing off once again, Krause for Virginia, and 17 for Howie Offit. Putting now as the ball kicked loose. Picked up by Saletti. Saletti loses it, rolling back towards the Hopkins goal. Dave Black has it under trouble. Picked up now by Caravana. Real control from Virginia. Back out front. Checked down by Howie Offit and a good play, and Johns Hopkins will have the ball cleared easily. Offit bringing it over the midfield line. They've got a fast break. He'll get it over to Bidney. Bidney should take it. Instead he fires inside. Back to Bidney now. Bidney shoots it through. Johns Hopkins rolling it up now. 3-0. 9:43 remaining in the first quarter.
We're going to look for Ace Adams to call a timeout very soon. I would think he'll either do it now or perhaps wait for one more goal. And as we look down in the field, he's making the sign of a T, and he is going to call a timeout. He wants to stop the Johns Hopkins juggernaut right now. He knows if Hopkins gets a big lead, they're going to be awesome.
And now we look as the University of Virginia has called a timeout. Virginia doesn't want this game to get out of control, losing 3-0 with only 5 minutes and 17 seconds gone in the first quarter.
And conversely, Henry Ciccarone is going to tell his charges, let's not let up right now. Let's keep this goal onslaught going. Johns Hopkins, when they get ahead, are a very, very tough team to defeat. They're very difficult, with the exception of Brendan Schneck, to pick out one player that you would key on, because when one player is double-teamed, then another player will really take up the slack, as we've seen so many times.
Coach Henry Ciccarone calling his forces not to become too overconfident. They know Virginia's an outstanding team. Virginia came from behind with just 5 minutes to go, being down 2 goals to North Carolina to win the semifinal. Look down now at Coach Henry Ciccarone, walking back to the bench with his team. Talking to Joe Saletti and Brendan Schneck. Saletti just out of your picture to the right, Schneck to the left.
I think it's pretty well conceded that Henry Ciccarone has surrounded himself with perhaps the finest coaching staff in the United States in lacrosse. In fact, it's often been said that you could take his coaching staff and put them on the field, they would make a fine lacrosse team in their own right. A bunch of former All-Americans and Johns Hopkins All-Americans at that.
Facing off again will be Steve Krause for the University of Virginia and Howie Alpert for Johns Hopkins. So far, the difference, I think, Joe, has been Mike Federico.
Absolutely. He made a point-blank save, which really sparked Johns Hopkins.
Alpert kind of falls over the ball. It's lying loose as Sonny Esposito comes in and knocks Saletti off the ball. The ball rolling towards the far sideline. Get back and play now. It'll be controlled by Virginia. Steve Krause with possession brings it in, and he'll allow the attack to get set up. His midfielders to get back in on offense. Gives it over to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll over to Sonny Esposito. Now back behind the goal to number 15, Caravana. Caravana picked up by Greenberg. A little bit of a story between Caravana and Greenberg. Caravana very unhappy with the way Greenberg played him in their first match earlier this year. I had a few words to say to Greenberg after the game. They try to get out to Esposito. Esposito comes clean on that side, but not clean enough to shoot. He'll pull back out, and they'll reload. Putting now for Esposito, trying his move against Joe Saletti. Saletti pushes him out. Still, if you look down towards the crease, Joe, you'll see that everybody played very, very tightly by the Hopkins defense. Hopkins playing them almost all the way out to the restraining line.
They do not let those players wander too far away. Part of the reason that Hopkins is so strong defensively is that many times Mike Federico does not have to make the save because it's stopped in there by the very tight Hopkins defense.
Randy Natoli now picked up by Howdy Nicholas. He'll take Nicholas all the way around behind the goal and look for an opening on the crease. Nicholas won't let him come back inside with an inside roll, so he decides to give it off to Mike Caravana. Caravana now picked up again by Greenberg, and believe me, when Greenberg doesn't want you to go to the goal, you don't go to the goal. Caravana pulls back out now. Greenberg stays with him all the way. Caravana inside, gets double teamed, runs himself into the double team. The ball pops loose. Saletti having a little trouble getting up off the rug, but he's clear coming across, looking inside. No fast break as the Virginia midfielders get back on defense very well.
Johns Hopkins enjoying a 3-goal lead. Now we'll probably watch them slow it down a little bit and look for the good shot. They can afford to take their time now. On top, 3-zip, a little under 8 minutes remaining in the first quarter.
The ball back behind it, Jeff Harris. Harris playing today in place of injured Jeff Cook, an outstanding attackman in his own right. Fires wide of the goal to the left-hand side. A move Harris likes, comes in, and he'll fire at the goal, or he'll give it up to Bidney if Bidney's man slides on him from the crease area.
Bob, your prediction, how long is Ace Adams going to let Gregory stay in that goal before he puts Botner in?
Well, Botner was in for a brief moment, about the 10-minute mark, and Gregory went right back in. So he'll stay with Gregory, I think, at least through the first half. Jimmy Zafuto now picked up inside by Kevin O'Shea, the All-American defenseman, so Zafuto gives it off to Wayne Davis. Davis wants to crank. Davis from Charlottesville, Virginia, one of the ones that got away from Coach Ace Adams, puts it back behind to Jeff Harris. Harris forces in his double team over to Ciccarone. He misses the pass, and the ball now rolling on the rug, and it really kicks off on this rug. If you're used to playing on dirt, it's a big difference, and they pick a long pass out over to Kevin O'Shea. Kevin O'Shea double teamed, and he gets a nice pass off to Mike Caravana. And part of the job an attackman has to do is come out from behind that goal and help out on the clears. As Ray Gistu gets the feed from Caravana, he'll settle it down out front and allow the Cavaliers to substitute on the fly, getting his brother Rick in the game and Billy Seary. And with that, we have a bench penalty, we believe, coming up, Joe.
We'll have to look down on the sidelines. Ace Adams seems to be very disturbed. His team now on offense. Johns Hopkins jumped off to a quick 3-zip lead. He has finally managed to control the ball. It looks, Bob, like it might be an illegal procedure penalty. Perhaps too many men on field, and if that's the case, then Virginia's going to lose possession.
They didn't come through the box. Head referee Fred Eisenbrand, sitting in the booth with us today, gave us a little hint on that one. The substitution was not made through the substitution box, and therefore it's an illegal procedure. Johns Hopkins will gain possession. Once again, Johns Hopkins setting up the 2-on-1 clear on the near side of the field. Ciccarone in the middle of the field. On the near side, Barney Fields and Wayne Davis. The ball goes back, almost kicks by Federico, and they'll take it all the way back to in front of the goal and set it up from there.
Once again, Virginia deploying the deep ride looking for a mistake on Hopkins' part so they can get a fast break out of this clear.
Back over to Greenberg now, back to Federico. Federico quickly over to Henry Ciccarone, and they have the 2-on-1 here. We've seen it all year long. It's knocked down temporarily, but Barney Fields has it, pulls out. Yes, Ciccarone open on the other side of the field, gives it to him, and Johns Hopkins has it cleared. Joe, we haven't seen anybody defend that 2-on-1 on the near side all season long.
No, they seem to let him get that man up there awfully easily, Bob.
Wayne Davis now gives it to Ciccarone. He gives it back to Jimmy Zafuto. Zafuto, an outstanding attackman, has the ball taken away by Kevin O'Shea. O'Shea, about 5 inches taller than Zafuto, went over his head. The ball rolling loose out of bounds, and we believe it'll go over to Johns Hopkins.
There's no doubt that between O'Shea for Virginia and Greenberg for Hopkins, we're looking at perhaps the 2 finest defensemen in the country today.
Waiting now as Jeff Harris will bring it in against Tony Savarese. New midfield now for Johns Hopkins. Brendan Schneck, Joe Saletti, and Bill Cantelli in the game for the first time. Cantelli from Long Island, New York, a freshman at Johns Hopkins University, one of the most highly recruited high school lacrosse players in the country last year. Number 7, Bill Cantelli. Jeff Harris brings it in. Savarese pokes it away. A nice check by Savarese. He picks it up, tries to get out of the trouble, and he's hacked down. The ball rolls out of his stick out of bounds, and Johns Hopkins should maintain possession.
Johns Hopkins swarming all over the ball at all times, and right now it's been all Johns Hopkins the whole way, at least in terms of goal. Virginia did have some ball control there, but they really have not gotten, with the exception of one shot, a really decent shot on goal.
Zafuto brings it out front and gives it off to Saletti. Saletti over to Brandon Schneck. Saletti will cut down, sort of a dummy cut, and Zafuto will cut off the pick and get the feed. He gives it back now to Saletti as Johns Hopkins moves their splits offense. Puts the ball back behind to Schneck. Schneck will probably try Kevin O'Shea on, coming hard out front. Will want to shoot if he gets 2 hands. The ball he does. Checked away nicely. Ball rolling loose. Picked up by Jeff Harris. He feeds it to the crease to Bidney. He's wide open, scores! Jim Bidney just snowboarding it right in front of the goal. Has a low bouncing shot go past Brian Gregory. Johns Hopkins now leads 4-0. 5:38 remaining in this quarter.
And perhaps you heard in the background that premature cannon, the Hopkins cannon they take to all games. We watch us coming up again, standing right on the crease, bouncing it right by Gregory.
One of the things you just saw, which you will not see on grass, was a bounce pass from Saletti to Bidney, and you'll never see that on the grass.
At any rate, as we started to say, as we listen to Johns Hopkins fans counting off, that cannon has been a source of controversy because sometimes this year it has been fired off prematurely, causing a lot of the players to relax, thinking that there's a goal.
Kraus controls the face-off, now rolls in across the top of the box, looking for an opening, picked up by Barney Field. He'll give it back off to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll, as we said, one of the top scorers for the Virginia Cavaliers, the trigger man on midfield offense. Wayne Davis staring him in the eyes now. And they give it off to Matt Reynes. Reynes, the attackman, pulling from in front of the goal as Virginia works a good weave with the attack and the midfielders. In fact, they've gone into an invert just about with 2 attackmen out in front of the goal, Reynes and Natoli. The ball given over to Kraus. Steve Kraus will take his man, Howie Alford, back behind the goal and try to set up a feed to a man coming clear on a pick in front of the crease. You see now it's Sonny Esposito with the ball, and he'll be picked up by Howie Alford. Esposito driving hard, coming back out front. Tries to feed. Nice job by Alford as Alford rolls him off. They give it off inside now to Randy Natoli. Natoli not open. He'll come clean and try to give it off to someone else. Natoli knocked down. The ball picked up by Federico, and a quick outlet pass to Wayne Davis, and Johns Hopkins goes back on offense. No fast break. 2-3 midfielders back in the hole for Virginia. Davis now gives it off, tries to give it off to Jeff Harris. Doesn't find it open. He keeps it and gives it over to Jim Bidney, the crease attackman, who pulls out in front of the goal.
Once again, Johns Hopkins defensively taking the ball away before there's even a chance for Virginia to pull the trigger.
Barney Field now coming up over to Wayne Davis. Davis got a good left-handed shot. Doesn't get it off that time. Pulls it back out. Feeds inside to Howie Alford. Has the ball checked away by Kraus. And Kraus is on his way downfield. He'll clear the ball easily for Virginia. Kraus settles down and gives it over to Sonny Esposito. Esposito glances to the bench to see if they're going to substitute middies. And the coaching staff waves off the substitution. So Esposito, Kraus, and Driscoll stay in the game at midfield for Virginia. Driscoll now in his long fly shot. A beautiful underhanded shot by Johnny Driscoll as he saw Federico standing flat-footed back in the goal. And Virginia has their first goal of the game, now trailing Johns Hopkins 4-1, 3:46 remaining in the first quarter.
Bob, it looked to me like Piggy Federico was not expecting this. Let's take a look at it again. Man rolling in right. He's going to switch left-handed here as he's coming out. Sees Federico kind of standing still and bounces a quick one by Michael. And Michael just can't get there in time as Virginia finally gets on the board. As you said, a little under 4 minutes to go. And this is the first quarter of the NCAA Division I Lacrosse Championships.
Facing off for Virginia now will be Rick Riccardi. And for Johns Hopkins will be number 18, Henry Ciccarone. No possession. Now it's funny, they got fast break coming in. Funny looks over, wants to fire instead, fires wide of the goal. He passed up the fast break pass to Bidney, and Bidney walks over to help him up. The ideal pass there would have been to Bidney. Bidney back to the point, to the corner rather, to Zaputo. Zaputo over to Harris, but Saletti thought he had an opening and fired the ball instead.
That's been a trademark of Johns Hopkins all year. Whenever a team starts to come back on them, they come back and score right on them, and that's what Hopkins was attempting to do there.
Zaputo coming back out front, picked up in there by Steve Byrne. He gives it off to Ciccarone, and Ciccarone over to Brendan Schneck. Schneck in a hard drive, gives it off to Ciccarone. He can fire from there. He looks once, turns and cranks, and is knocked down by one of the defensemen in front of the goal. Rolls out of bounds. It should be Johns Hopkins' ball as Zaputo is closest to the ball as it goes out of bounds.
I don't think Henry Ciccarone Jr. could believe his eyes there. Brendan Schneck flipped the ball off. They concentrated so much on Brendan that Ciccarone was standing there naked, really could have taken another step, walked in. When he finally cranked, it hit one of the defenseman's sticks.
The defenseman for Virginia got caught between slides and was neither fish nor foul. That's how Ciccarone came so open. Ciccarone now getting close. He'll fire again. Wide of the goal, left-hand side. Knocked around, loosened the crease, and that's what you don't want. You want to control that ball and get it out for the clear. Now Bidney will control it for Johnson. Bidney, one of the best loose ball men in lacrosse. Back out front to Brendan Schneck, the awesome Brendan Schneck. He's going to run by O'Shea if he can. If not, he'll set up a 2-on-1. This time he gets by, he'll turn and shoot. A low bouncer rolling loose in front of the goal, controlled by Gregory. Gregory looks for the quick outlet pass and finds it over here with number 9, Steve Byrne. Byrne's on his way up. He has to clear it over to number 29, Jeff Peters. And they'll get those defensemen out of the game. Peters now breaks loose coming in towards the goal. Tries to feed in towards the crease. Struck down. Mark Greenberg controls, gives it over to Mike Federico, and a wasted pass by Jeff Peters. Waiting now as Federico sets up the clear for Johns Hopkins. I think Jeff Peters couldn't believe it, Joe, when he came clean in front of the goal like that. For somebody to shoot to feed it off to, and at the last knocked down by Greenberg.
Well, that's why defensemen aren't attackmen. He stood flat-footed when he feeds, and as every high school attackman knows, you can't stand still and feed. The defenseman came, paused, saw that he was open. He was being picked up, and he's fed flat-footed. Ball easily knocked down by Hopkins. As once again, Johns Hopkins attempting to clear. Ball off of Virginia stick, and it's going to be awarded to Johns Hopkins.
Coach Henry Ciccarone telling Mr. Cantelli move the ball a little quicker. Billy Cantelli had Barney Fields open on the near sideline, the 2-on-1. However, he threw it right into the stick of Matt Rainis. It went out of bounds, and Johns Hopkins gains possession.
And let's look now when Johns Hopkins fires on goal. One of the defensemen from Virginia, probably Sotier, to jump in there a lot of times and provide the duties of being a defense goalie. Actually, 2 men in the goal a lot of times on these shots.
Jimmy Zaputo now holds the ball right in front of the Virginia bench, waiting for everyone to get it on offense. Gives it over to Wayne Davis. Davis picked up by Stevie Byrne. Davis just jogging slowly, gives it over to Jeff Harris. Harris will take his man, Tony Savarese, back behind the goal to set up the offense. Now drives in hard. He's clean, he wants to shoot, he's wide. He's checked down at the last minute by Savarese on a real good play. Picked up in there by Mike Sotier. Sotier gives it off quickly to Jeff Peters, and Virginia comes back the other way. In now to Matt Rainis. Rainis will back out and jog back behind the goal, picked up by Dave Black to allow substitutions on the fly for Virginia as they get the Justo brothers and Billy Syria in on offense.
Just winding down to 1 minute in the first quarter. I know Ace Adams would like his team to at least get another goal here.
Syria coming back in against Wayne Davis. Fires a shot up. Very, very good shot as he came off the roll dodge. Federico read it nicely, kicked it back out front. Ball rolling now controlled by Rick Justo. 50 seconds showing on the big scoreboard clock at Shokov. Gives it over now to his brother Ray. Ray driving in against Lance Schneck. Schneck, a real good defenseman on midfield. They try to flip it in quickly to Rick. That's a bad pass. Rick was handcuffed by the pass. It's rolling loose. We have a loose ball push called, and Virginia will gain possession.
Since that is a technical loose ball foul, it should not be a loss of a man. Things should be all even right now. Johns Hopkins substituting another defenseman in there.
That's Marty Bergen, number 45, coming into the game at midfield defense. Caravana now coming in against Greenberg. Greenberg doing a very good job with Caravana up to this time. He gives it off to Billy Siri. Siri picked up by Marty Bergen. Siri driving in. He'll try to get a shot off with only 26 seconds showing. Flag down, delayed call. It's going to go against Marty Bergen. It'll be a slash, and Virginia will have an extra man opportunity. Joe, you might want to explain what can happen if Virginia still has the ball at the end of this quarter.
Well, in order not to penalize a team that has a penalty awarded to it, in this case a 1 minute slashing call, when you come to the end of a quarter, the ball remains in their possession at the end of the quarter without a face-off if they are in possession and still on extra man at the end of this quarter. So Ace Adams has 24 seconds to work with. He'll probably try and get a goal out of it. Maybe 6 seconds. He'll probably have his team hold the ball. He'll open the second quarter with possession without the need for a face-off.
Ray Justo and Rick Justo out at the top of the box, flat with the goal inside. Tim O'Shea back behind a Caravana as Greenberg puts the pressure on Caravana, something you don't usually see on extra man D. Over to Rick Justo, back inside to Johnny Driscoll. He pulls out now, not sure whether to shoot or not. They give it to Rick Justo. Justo back over to Tim O'Shea. 4 seconds showing on the clock. They'll hold the ball right now and have possession at the beginning of the second quarter. 1 second, and that's the end of the first quarter of the NCAA Division I championship game. Johns Hopkins 4, Virginia 1. We'll be back in a moment. Back now to second quarter action. Johns Hopkins will be down a man for 36 seconds. A slash called on Marty Bergen with 24 seconds to go in the first quarter. Virginia controlling the ball, and if you have the ball when the quarter's over in your possession, you get it back in a penalty situation. Virginia now in a 3-1-2. They put the ball back over to Timmy O'Shea, back now to Mike Caravana, to Timmy O'Shea, back out front to Rick Justo. Justo over to Ray. His brother Ray back out to Rick. Rick looking for an opening, doesn't find it, gives it back to Ray. They're playing catch right out in front, trying to find an opening in towards the crease. Back behind the goal now to Mike Caravana. Caravana's going to try to pull Greenberg back towards the goal, draw a double team. A bad pass. Picked up now by Ray Justo. He fires. A nice play by Federico. Picked up right in the stick of Hattie Nicholas. And Nicholas is on his way to clear the ball for Johns Hopkins. A beautiful pass into Soletti. Soletti's got a fast break coming back in over to Bidney. Bidney looks into Zafuto. Zafuto does not have an opening as they were down a man coming down. But Johns Hopkins has killed the extra man offense of Virginia. A beautiful check by O'Shea, but controlled now by David Black. And he'll come across the midfield line with the ball easily clear, looking inside for some help. And he'll find Jim Bidney. Gives it off to Bidney on a bounce as Johns Hopkins utilizing the AstroTurf here to its fullest.
Johns Hopkins, of course, had the opportunity to practice at Loyola College, a sister college in Baltimore, a brother college, and had 4 days on the AstroTurf. So apparently that's been to their favor. Plus, I think Brendan Schneck being able to play on AstroTurf without that sloppy, slidey field of Homewood must feel that he's just been released from prison.
Johns Hopkins now in the midfield of Ciccarone, Soletti, and Brendan Schneck. 2 men in on the crease. We have a call coming up.
It's going to be a moving pick, Bob. Of course, you cannot move into another player. You've got to let him come through there freely. And Johns Hopkins was detected there on a moving pick. So Virginia now down 4-1, 13 minutes and 35 seconds remaining at halftime. Will have the ball in their possession. Johns Hopkins dominating the whole way in scoring, with the exception of a lone Virginia goal.
Putting the ball back to play for Virginia will be Kevin O'Shea. He gives it over to Brian Gregory. As we look up now, we see that Virginia is an L clear to the near side of the field. They'll try to come off to the defense up here right in front of the scorer's table. O'Shea back to Gregory. Gregory looks at Sotier once, cradles once, now gives it over to Sotier. Sotier looking for an open mid. He doesn't find one, doesn't want to force a pass in the middle because he knows Gregory's far out of the goal, would not be able to get back in time, and that would be another opportunity for Johns Hopkins to add a goal. Shea now trapped on the near sideline, doesn't find an opening as Johns Hopkins is riding very well. What Johns Hopkins is doing is sliding in a zone at the midfield lines. They do finally get it across to Lou Rowland, and he has it cleared for Virginia. Johns Hopkins sliding very well on the midfield line and trapping the defenseman as he comes up towards the midfield line. However, Lou Rowland broke loose, and Virginia has it cleared.
We'll see very little backing from the defenseman on the midfield defenseman because, as assistant coach Joe Cowan told us, we expect these defensemen to be able to play these middies out there without much help.
Leroy Katz is beaten by Lou Rowland. Rowland with a good bounce shot over top the goal, and back up in there by Caravana from Virginia. Now Virginia will make a substitution on the fly, with a timeout of number 7, Rich Riccardi, number 32, John Driscoll, and number 20, Johnny Driscoll.
As we looked down to the net just a few seconds ago and saw All-American Mike Federico, sometimes that AstroTurf can be a negative factor, Bob. If that ball is bounced down too hard, it's going to jump high over the goal. It won't skitter like it does on mud or grass. Henry Ciccarone now wanting to pull a player out of the game.
Bent stick. Leroy Katz's stick is bent almost about 15 degrees, I'd say. And Coach Henry Ciccarone asked to get him out of the game, or at least get a new stick. We have basically what is equipment timeout as they try to take the head off of that stick and select another one. I don't think they'll hold the game all that time. Waiting now, they bring in Kevin Kilner to play midfield defense to replace Leroy Katz as he fixes his equipment. Caravana now once again trying on Greenberg, gives it up as he gives it over to Sonny Esposito. As Esposito roses it off to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll with a good, hard left-handed shot in the first quarter, scoring the only goal for the University of Virginia.
Good job, Brent.
Excellent defensive play by Johns Hopkins right here. Esposito is going to try to drive past Kilner. Gets by Kilner on the inside, feeds off over to number 7, Richie Riccardi, with kind of a weak shot that kind of Federico loves. He loves a beautiful clearing pass out to Marty Bergen. Bergen will slow it down, look for some help, get the ball off to an attackman for Johns Hopkins and get back on the near side of the field.
Of course, one of the disabilities with using 5 or 6 defensemen on that defensive midfield is that you really don't have much shot on an extra man situation because they want to hold the ball and get those offensive midfielders in. But enjoying a 4-1 lead, Johns Hopkins is perfectly content to control the ball until they can get that offensive midfield in, which they now have.
Brendan Schneck with the ball, trying to drive inside against Johnny Driscoll. Instead gives it off to Jeff Harris as Harris pulls out from behind the goal. Picked up by number 25, Tony Savarese. Harris, hampered by a hamstring pull all season, has come back very well in the last few games, just in time as Jeff Cook injured his back and couldn't play. Now Brendan Schneck driving in, gives it back to Harris. Harris quickly behind, point behind to Zafuto. And back out front to Ciccarone. Ciccarone now over to Jeff Harris. Harris is clean on fire, low bouncer. Knocked down by Sonny Esposito in there, picked off by Tony Savarese. Quickly over to Kevin O'Shea and quickly up to Mike Sotier. And Virginia on the way to having the ball cleared easily. Mike Caravana coming out to help on the clear, and he gives it off to number 19, Ray Justo.
If you just joined us, Virginia controlled the ball for the first 3.5 minutes, didn't get any goals. Then Johns Hopkins came off the deck with 3 fast goals, and that's been the difference in the ball game. After that, each team exchanged goals, and it's kind of settled down since then.
Joe, one of the things that Virginia's going to have to start doing is firing from the outside. They're working awfully hard for their shots and not getting very good shots. Look now, Rick Justo driving inside, wants to give it up. He's triple teamed and gets it off to his brother Ray. He had the late call flag as Ray drives back inside. The ball's down, and now we'll have the penalty call.
And we look down on the field for the referee to call. It's probably going to be a slashing penalty, and that's what it is. A 1-minute extra man play for Virginia. There's only been one previous extra man play, and that went to Virginia. They couldn't convert as they came down to the end of the first quarter, had the ball at the end of the second quarter. As we see it coming up again. Slash right there as the man's coming across. And so Virginia now will have an opportunity once again on extra man to see if they can draw a little closer, trailing Johns Hopkins, defending NCAA champions, by a score of 4-1.
Ray Justo out front with Johnny Driscoll and his brother Rick. Now we see Randy Natoli come in from the side. He'll set up a high post for the middies to come. They give it over to Driscoll. Driscoll back out front to Ray Justo. Justo over to Rick. Rick wants to crack and fires high. Federico had that one measured all the way. Bounces out of bounds off the back line, and Mike Caravana will put it back in play for Virginia.
What Virginia really needs against goaltender Mike Federico is some screens on that crease.
Natoli's actually sitting out too high to set a good screen. He has to drop down to about 5 yards. Now he does drop down to give it over to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll back behind Caravana. Caravana tries to feed out front to Rick. Rick back over to Driscoll. He fires. Not a real good shot. He was being charged by Jimmy Esposito.
Of course, the theory on extra man is to get that defense rotating around opposite the ball and then feed what's called the backside or the back door. And that, of course, is the side which the goalie is not looking. So you'll look for a cross-field pass to that open man. 5 men playing 6 on the extra man.
Virginia now with 2 men on the crease as they give it over to Driscoll. Natoli and Ray Justo. The ball knocked down by Dave Black on an alert play. It'll go back to Virginia if it goes out of bounds. Black kicks it around a little bit, kept back in play, picked up by Ray Justo, and he loses it. Still kept in play. We're going to have a loose ball push call, and possession's going to go over to Johns Hopkins.
Once again, Virginia, the second 1-minute extra man play on opportunity, and they squandered it. And if they'd taken advantage of that, they would be a little bit closer in this ball game. As we watch it coming up again, a little push from behind here. Right there. Here it is, right there. Getting a little Superman activity, flipping him on the ground. And so Johns Hopkins, on a loose ball technical, will take over and thwart, once again, the extra man play of the University of Virginia Cavaliers, who are still trailing by a score of 4-1.
The penalty's all over, Joe, as we see Johns Hopkins substituting on the fly. Wayne Davis and Barney Field coming into the game at midfield, and they'll be joined by Bill Cantelli as Mike Federico holds the ball, waiting for the substitutions to be completed.
With the exception of those very 3 quick goals that Johns Hopkins scored, a very, very good defensive ball game here today.
Cantelli now back to Federico. They have a 2-on-1 on this side with 2 defensemen, and Mark Greenberg, who can run as well as any midfielder, brings it over clean, gives it off to Jim Bidney. Bidney back to Greenberg. They know where their help is on this Johns Hopkins team, Joe. They put the ball back to where the man's supposed to be. Once again, you see evidence. Wayne Davis loses it. It's backed up nicely by Barney Field.
Johns Hopkins plays very, very good team offense, as does Virginia. They move the ball. They know if you move the ball, you're going to find an open man. Hopkins very seldom just stands around with it when they're on the move.
Wayne Davis now gives it back over to Barney Field. Field comes out, looks at Jeff Harris. Field not a particularly good outside shooter, a little better cutter than an outside shooter. We'd have looked him to crank one from too far out front. Pushed inside. Man, nice job being done now by Jeff Peters, and he'll give it back out to Wayne Davis. Davis picked up by another defenseman, number 9, Stevie Byrne. Davis, a good shooter from the outside, but tries to get it over to Jeff Harris and throws the ball out of bounds. Davis might have been able to get a back roll back to the left side and fire, but he couldn't get it off, and Virginia takes possession.
Ace Adams has really settled his team down now. They're playing some kind of super defense. They do need to start thinking about scoring, getting the ball outside, maybe taking a few outside screen shots, as you suggested before, Bob, because Virginia's efforts to work that ball into the crease have really been thwarted by the Johns Hopkins defense, particularly when they have 6 defensemen in there. As we watch now, Virginia clearing the ball very slowly upfield. Johns Hopkins in a deep ride also.
Billy Siri with the ball, gives it over to Mike Sotier. Sotier comes back to draw some pressure, draws a little more than he wants, and gives it off to Brian Gregory. Gregory now looks back and gives it back to Sotier. Once again, Johns Hopkins in a good zone ride, sliding very well across the midfield line. Tony Savarese clear on this side, but it's a long pass, and that's the pass you try to get the guys to make, Joe. You want them to throw that 40 or 50-yard pass. That's the one that's not likely to be cleared as we look down, and they do just that, and cleared very nicely to number 33, Dave Willis, a big attackman for the University of Virginia in the game for the first time. Back out front now to Rick Justo. Justo picked up by Leroy Katz, and he'll give it off to Dave Willis. Willis now is going to try Dave Blacklaw, gets back inside. Dave Black tries to shoot, and it's popped straight up in the air, picked off by Federico. He loses it, gives it over to Greenberg. Greenberg's on his way. A beautiful pass to Bidney. They've got a fast break now. He gives it over to Harris. Harris back to Zavuto. Zavuto doesn't get it, and not a clean pass. If that had been a good pass, Zavuto would have had his goal.
Zavuto, however, pursuing, running the defenseman for Virginia, and Mike Sotier getting run out of the back line right now, and there's going to be a timeout called by Johns Hopkins. 6 minutes, 48 seconds remaining. Johns Hopkins, and now what's settled down to be a defensive ball game.
This is one of the fastest quarters we've seen all year, Joe. This quarter is run in only about 10 minutes.
You know, earlier I had a chance to talk to Richie Moran about the difference in AstroTurf. He's coached on it. He's played 3 NCAA championships he's won on it, and this is what he had to tell me.
Yes, if you're not accustomed to it, Hopkins had an opportunity this week to work out at Loyola. When you look at the AstroTurf here at Cornell, it's a little softer, a little smoother than it is at Virginia. For goaltenders, for example, they'll get accustomed to the bounces. The ball will come up in a different direction. It'll skim if it's wet. So there's no question, Virginia will have a slight advantage having played on it as a home field. Hopkins has adjusted themselves very nicely whenever they had to play on AstroTurf. Their opportunity to work out this past week at Loyola will definitely be an asset to them. If there's any face-off situations, you know the strength, the resistance of the synthetic. It's not going to be like you're dealing with a quagmire or dealing with soft turf on the ground. So basically, it's essential to get your stick handlers to get accustomed to it, and I think Hopkins did that this week. They were up here yesterday working out. The field arrangements here at Cornell are excellent for any team to play here. As far as the bounce of the ball, there's no question there will be a difference in the turf.
That's head coach Richie Moran, the head coach of the Cornell Big Red, who is the host for the NCAA championships. The site, of course, selected several years in advance without regard to who is in this. It is a neutral site, as it has been every year except last year when the University of Maryland played on their home field and lost. And Richie Moran, rumored, by the way, to be the odds-on favorite to get the coaching job at the University of Maryland, but we've heard nothing to confirm or deny this.
What he now is Brendan Schneck, brings it in against Kevin O'Shea. Schneck out front to Ciccarone. Ciccarone back to Schneck. They're going to try to isolate Schneck on Kevin O'Shea. Kevin O'Shea, an All-American defenseman, an outstanding defenseman. He's got his hands full here with Brendan Schneck. If Schneck comes clean, he could fire, but there was no place open in front of the goal as he puts it back behind to Bidney. Bidney back out front to Zafuto. Zafuto shoots a wide to the left. A good shot by Zafuto on the ground, wide to the left-hand side, but it was backed up by Bidney, and Johns Hopkins gains possession.
A lot of people had predicted this to be a very explosive game, a very high-scoring game, because of playing on the AstroTurf where there was good footing. Both teams have good scores, but so far it's been the defense all the way.
Johns Hopkins now rebalancing their midfield, getting Henry Ciccarone and Wayne Davis and Joe Saletti in on midfield offense. Jeff Harris brings it out front, gives it over to Wayne Davis. Davis picked up in there by Stevie Byrne. Davis about to give it off to Ciccarone, but Ciccarone being shadowed very well inside by number 36, Dave Redmond for Virginia. Now Ciccarone drives past Redmond, loses the ball. Redmond checks it away. Ciccarone recovers and fires. Good, quick move by Ciccarone. He picked the ball up on the first bounce and cranked it to the left side of the goalie's right-hand side. Backed up once again by Jim Bidney.
Ciccarone, a freshman from the Boys Latin School in Baltimore, Bob, has made tremendous progress this year. Started at the beginning of the year, a little tentative as most freshmen are, and then against Syracuse in the NCAA semifinals, went right down the field, face-dodged the middies, and came up with the first goal for the Blue Jays.
Ciccarone now is going to try to draw a double team as he can give it up. Drives inside. His double team fires. A nice shot. Regained by Harris. Harris almost throws the rebound in. Picked off by Brian Gregory, and Gregory has 4 seconds to get out of there. He loses the ball. Picked up by Bidney. Nobody in front of the goal, though, and Bidney's in trouble as he's driven to the back line by Tony Savarese. Back out front to Ciccarone. He now feeds Saputo cutting across the front of the goal. He loses it. Gregory out throwing his body around a little bit, not too wise, nobody in the goal. Bidney with a long backside pass, and Harris fires. A good quick stick by Harris. However, one of the defensemen got in the middle, bounced off of him, and it rolled out of bounds on the end line, backed up by Saputo. Johns Hopkins still has the ball, though.
Kevin O'Shea, as we watch this again, playing very good position. Goalie down out of the goal, and let's watch and see that ball coming through. It's number 17, O'Shea, getting the save there and keeping Virginia from going down by one more goal. Hopkins on the offense again. 5:18 remaining in a half.
Saputo now picked up by Kevin O'Shea, drives O'Shea back out, tries to get over his head, fires a nice save inside by Tony Savarese, the defenseman, standing in the crease area with Brian Gregory. The ball's still loose, and that should be a loose ball push as Saputo ran in there from behind, and we'll see what happens.
That's exactly what's going to be, a loose ball push from behind, so Virginia should be awarded the ball. Johns Hopkins still on top, 4-1. 5 minutes, 6 seconds remaining in the first half of the NCAA Championship Division I lacrosse game, coming to you from Ithaca, Cornell.
Talking about the new man in attack for the University of Virginia, number 33, Dave Willis, a freshman attackman, 6'2", 185 from Gilman School in Baltimore, Maryland. We look now as Kevin O'Shea tries to get the ball up, gives it over to Brian Gregory, and Virginia in the same clearing pattern they've had all day.
You know, Bob, even though Virginia is down 4-1, they are now playing and have been for almost 15 minutes Ace Adams game. They have been playing a ball control type of game. This is the kind of game that Ace wanted today. He does not want to run and gun with Johns Hopkins. That happened early on, and Johns Hopkins got the lead as a result of that. Now it's been a ball control game, and Virginia has got to slowly work and start getting some goals.
Johnny Driscoll finally gets the ball cleared at the midfield lines. He breaks away from Lance Schneck. He'll hold it momentarily while Virginia sets up their offense. Rosies it off to Sonny Esposito. And back over to Richard Riccardi. Riccardi looking at Marty Bergen. Bergen pokes once as he gives it off to Sonny Esposito. They try to drive in and give it over to Pat Finn as Coach Ace Adams is resting his starting attackman. Pat Finn in the game, Dave Willis in the game, their reserve men. Esposito now takes Leroy Katz back behind the goal to try to set up something. Gives it in to Driscoll. Driscoll checked nicely by Mark Greenberg. Greenberg back to Federico. Federico over to Lance Schneck. And Johns Hopkins once again regains possession.
Regains possession without Virginia even getting a shot on goal, the trademark of the Hopkins defense.
Johns Hopkins now substituting on the fly, getting Joe Saletti, Henry Ciccarone Jr., and Brandon Schneck in the game on offense as Mike Federico holds the ball. No pressure from the Virginia attack as Hopkins attempts to clear.
Bob, this game really speeding along, a low-scoring defensive game. Right now, about 45 minutes by the watch time having elapsed in this game. 3:24 remaining on the scoreboard clock in playing time. 4-1 Johns Hopkins over Virginia.
Another nice bounce pass by Henry Ciccarone, and Johns Hopkins may not have played much on the AstroTurf this year, but they sure are using it well today. Now they get over to Brandon Schneck, and Brandon Schneck will try to beat the midfielder or defenseman. The defenseman he has on him now, number 9, Steve Byrne. Looks at him once and gives it over to Ciccarone, back to Saputo, back to Bidney. Joe Saletti slides down the crease to take the place of Jim Bidney. When Bidney comes back on the crease, they'll have a good screen for an outside shot. Back over to Jeff Harris. Harris picked up by Savarese, puts it back out front to Brendan Schneck. Schneck now will drive in and try to fire off the screen, gives it over to Jeff Harris. Instead, Harris point behind is Saputo. Saputo's wide open, comes out front, overshoots Saletti, and the ball will go out of bounds. Henry Ciccarone not be able to back up Saletti, and Virginia will gain possession. We have a foul call.
Let's go!
O'Shea back to Brian Gregory. Virginia, no hurry to clear. They'll wait till they get a midfielder open, cutting back towards the ball. And there's Ray Justo. Justo still not out of trouble as Lance Schneck has him. He'll try to drive him out of bounds, but the foot race is won by Justo, and Justo gets it back to Willis. Willis jogging, looking back out front, looking for a cutter, doesn't find one, trying to beat Dave Black now. Pulls back out. Quick feed, a bad feed as he tried to hit Pat Finn coming towards the crease, but backed up nicely by Mike Caravana. Caravana doesn't want any parts of Greenberg in that part of the field and gives it off to Rick Justo. Justo now out in the top of the box with Lou Ruin. Hopkins' defense just awesome here. They call that a brush as Leroy Katz pokes inside of Rick Justo. Ray Justo now trying to beat Lance Schneck. Has the ball knocked down by Schneck. Schneck tries to get it out of there. It's put straight up in the air. Anybody's ball at this point. They bat at it. Picked up by Ruin. He's got a shot. If he takes it, he trips down and loses the ball as he could not gain his footing on the AstroTurf. Picked up by Federico. Federico to Black. Black to Schneck, and Johns Hopkins goes back on offense.
Schneck, of course, being a Lance Schneck, the defenseman, younger brother of Brendan Schneck. Very athletic family as the two Schnecks pass each other. Lance on his way out of the game, number 24. Brother 25 now will handle the ball, winding down to almost 1 minute, minute and 5 seconds remaining as Johns Hopkins maintains control.
It's the fastest half of lacrosse I've seen all year, Joe, and I've seen about 25 games this year. Brendan Schneck now tries to get it off on a back pass to Jeff Harris. The foot race between Harris and Savarese, and Harris wins it. He gets it to Schneck. Schneck will force him to draw pressure and puts it back behind Zafuto. Zafuto looks out front to Sleddy. Sleddy doesn't get the feed. Out of bounds, and Virginia will gain possession. And Coach Henry is jumping up and down.
Unlike a regular grass field, if you miss a feed, you can bet it's going to go out of bounds on this AstroTurf.
46 seconds showing on the halftime clock here at Sholkoff Field, and what's turned out to be a beautiful day, a great crowd, and an outstanding lacrosse game.
Extremely hot, a lot of humidity. Ace Adams had rested his first attack there for a few minutes, maybe a factor later on as this ball game has really settled down.
Gregory now tries to get it into Savarese. He has it, but he's not out of trouble. Gets it off to Esposito. Esposito now pinned on the sidelines, and they call timeout with 35 seconds. The Cavaliers calling timeout in this half.
You can bet Ace Adams is going to try and utilize his 35 seconds to see if they can get a goal here to draw within 2 of Johns Hopkins. If you've just joined us, Joe Hart along with Bob Smith. NCAA championship, Virginia down to Johns Hopkins 4-1. Virginia controlled the ball early on.
Looking down now as both teams are huddled.
Two midfields over here. Let's get together. Red and white over here. Attack your round. Come here.
That's Coach Bruce Arena.
Billy, listen. John behind the cage. Sonny, you two with the ball, we're switching. The ball's out front here, should be with Ray. Okay? Ray, move it in. As soon as Ray moves in with it, we're making our moves. Rich, you're coming a little high. Rick, you're going around him. Bill going to the crease. Sonny and John exchanging positions. Rich, make sure you start on the crease and you get that kid on you. Okay?
We don't want all this on TV.
Get the ball.
Enough color.
Get the ball, Rich. We're looking for the sweep here. We've got nothing. We've got John rolling up. Rick, you're looking for a back door on this side. Everyone's set on what we're doing. Ray, you've got the ball. Rick out top. One pass. Two man out front. Let's go.
That's Bruce Arena down on the field, telling them to put 2 men out front. Having a little difficulty hearing. It sounded like he wanted them to set a pick and jump off of it and look for the screen. Let's see if the University of Virginia can utilize that timeout to get themselves a goal.
Ray Justo will force in. You heard him say, when Ray brings it in, that's when you make your move. Number 19, Ray Justo, will try to force in against Lance Schneck and watch the Virginia attack cut off their picks in front of the goal. 28 seconds showing on the clock. He roses it off to number 7, Rich Riccardi. Riccardi, a low bouncer. I don't think that was the play they wanted to pull, Joe.
That was an awful weak shot, Bob.
Out to Lance Schneck. Schneck back to Black. Johns Hopkins will be in no hurry to clear. 14 seconds showing on the halftime clock here. Federico holds it, gives it over to Leroy Katz. Katz will jog up and then probably turn back as we see 5 seconds. A little bit of pushing on the far sideline. Federico now the long clearing pass up towards the Virginia goal. And kind of a strange move. Brian Gagery came out as the halftime end to push Zafuto. The ball could have bounced in the goal, but it did not. And that's the end of the first half. Johns Hopkins leading Virginia 4-1. We'll be back in a moment.
And now halftime is concluded with Johns Hopkins on top 4-1. We want to thank our Richie Moran, the head coach at Cornell, for his halftime analysis, and we'll see if the respective coaches do what Richie said he thought they would do. In essence, Richie was talking about more movement for Virginia. Make Mike Federico move. Johns Hopkins on top 4-1. If you didn't see the first half, just briefly, Virginia controlled the ball for the first 3 minutes. Then Johns Hopkins, in a very brief period of time, got 3 quick goals. Johns Hopkins and Virginia then exchanged goals, and that's the way it's been, Bob, all the way through the first half. And now we'll look for the second half. For play-by-play, Bob Smith.
See if we'll see a little more offense this half as Steve Krause controls the face-off of Virginia, and they're pushing in towards the goal. He spies a bouncer and a nice save inside. We're not sure who it bounced off. We couldn't see whether it was Federico or Mark Greenberg, but it was backed up nicely by Krause, who shot the ball, and Virginia will retain possession. Waiting now is Johns Hopkins. Substitutes, midfield defense, Lance Schneck, number 24, Leroy Katz, number 38, and Marty Bergen, number 45. Caravana having trouble with Greenberg all day long. Greenberg takes the ball away from him again. It's rolling loose, picked up by Federico. A little bit of trouble in front of the goal, and he flips it off, and a beautiful flip-off to Lance Schneck, and he has it cleared easily. Federico, the star of the game today as far as I'm concerned. Schneck wide open. He's not afraid to shoot. He'll run and fire. Nice save by Gregory as he bounces it off his leg, rolls out towards the end line. We make the call from the referee. It will go back over to Johns Hopkins.
How many times this year, Bob, have we seen a defenseman come down with that long stick and bounce one past the goalies? We take a look at it again. This is not Brendan Schneck, but Lance, and there had to be a great save made in there by Gregory, the goalie for Virginia. Otherwise, Hopkins would have enjoyed a 4-goal lead. Right now, Johns Hopkins 4, University of Virginia 1.
Jim Zafuto picked up by Steve Byrne. Zafuto will give it off, drop back down towards the pipe, a position he likes to shoot from. Now he cuts in as Hopkins has 3 men on the crease. Brandon Schneck out front, pulls out and gives it over to Jim Bidney. Bidney feeds Schneck on a give and go. The ball gets through. The pass a little high towards Schneck, and Tony Savarese recovers for the University of Virginia, gives it off to Gregory behind the goal.
Lacrosse, like so many other games, is a game of momentum. The momentum seems to be at a standstill since about the middle of the first period, Bob, and right now it's up to either team to really start taking off. If Virginia gets a goal or two here, they can really explode and get right back in this ball game.
We have not seen Johns Hopkins shoot off a screen. Jim Bidney, one of the best screen crease attackmen in the game. Hopkins has not utilized him too much today in that position, and we'd look to see a little more of that in this half. As Virginia tries to clear with Kevin O'Shea, gets it over across to number 35, Billy Weicker. Excuse me, that was number 25, Tony Savarese. And now Virginia has the ball cleared. Sonny Esposito driving down towards the goal. So he can shoot from there as he comes inside, fires a low bouncer, and rolls in on the Federico. Virginia has their second goal of the game. Now Johns Hopkins leading Virginia 4-2, 13-13 remaining in the third quarter. Federico thought he had that one all the way.
A brilliant goal as we look at it coming up again. Mike Federico, this is how tough Federico is. He makes the save and the ball still rolls in anyway. He was right in position, a really hard fired shot. Federico has it in his stick as you can see, and then it leaks out right behind him, and in disgust he turns around, watches it roll in the net, as now Virginia draws first blood of the second half to go within 2 goals of Johns Hopkins. 4 for Johns Hopkins, 2 for Virginia. Let's see if Virginia can continue to control those face-offs.
Hoppit rolls it back, picked up inside by Lou Rowan. They got a fast break, but Greenberg allows Greenberg to cover him 2-on-1. They give it off back outside to Rowan now. As the ball's checked away by Greenberg all over the field, can't pick it up as it rolls, and he backhand flips it in towards Jim Bidney. Bidney with a fast break into Brendan Schneck. Schneck looks inside and tries to get the ball to Zafuto. It's knocked down. It should go back over to Virginia.
It will. A beautiful check in there by the Virginia defenseman as Brendan Schneck came downfield, started at Henry Ciccarone, extremely upset. I believe he feels that that ball went off of Virginia's stick. From where we sat, it looked like it was a check, and it came out of Brendan Schneck's stick. Henry Ciccarone still jealously guarding this 2-goal lead right now. He knows that this game is really settled into what Ace Adams wants it to be, and that's a ball control game.
That's the way Virginia beat Johns Hopkins the last time, by controlling the ball. Hopkins only scoring 9 goals, one of their lowest outputs of the entire season. Johns Hopkins averages 16 goals a game and yields 7. Virginia scores an average of 13 and yields 7.
Bob, I can't remember such a low-scoring championship game I can't remember Virginia being held to 1 goal and a half.
Justo fires in towards Natoli. He tries to get a backhanded shot off, but Federico sort of tips it away. Federico with an errant pass. Natoli looking for somebody to give it off to. Fires out front to Caravana, and he scores! A nice move by Natoli and Caravana, and Johns Hopkins' lead is cut to 1 now, 4-3, 12-18 remaining in the third quarter.
And Bob, what did I just say about momentum? So important in this game of lacrosse. Ace Adams has settled it down. Let's watch. Ball lost behind the goal, picked up by the Virginia man. Hopkins on the defense, but there he is right out in the middle. And a beautiful bounce pass. Federico caught out of the goal.
Mike Caravana on the goal. The kind of mistake Federico doesn't often make, the errant pass behind the goal. He wasn't under any particular pressure. He was trying to get the ball moved upfield quickly.
So now it's Johns Hopkins 4, Virginia 3. Virginia held scoreless throughout the second period. Now scored 2 quick goals to draw. Then Johns Hopkins
going in wide open. He'll fire. Wide of the goal to the right-hand side. Mike Federico dives for the end line, but it was backed up in there by Matt Reynes. And the enthusiastic Virginia fans start to whoop it up. Looking back now, Reynes will put it, Caravana will put it in play. Now we see now they are going to give it to Matt Reynes. He'll be picked up by Dave Black.
A beautiful, warm, and muggy day here in Ithaca.
Reynes driving in on Dave Black. Reynes was substituted for earlier. Now Reynes gets loose. We have a slide coming by Mark Greenberg across the crease, and Reynes is called for warding off anyway, and Johns Hopkins will get the ball.
When you come around and you have that ball in your stick, you cannot push off with your hand. You can stick that hand out there stationarily and let it sit there, but you cannot push off or ward off, and that's what Reynes was called for doing. So now Johns Hopkins will try and get the momentum back as they are only up by 1 goal, enjoyed a 4-1 lead at the first half, and are now only leading by a goal, 4-3 over the resurgent Virginia Cavaliers.
Mike Federico bringing it up, looking for some help. Gives it over to Greenberg on the far side of the field. Back to Federico. No middies open in the midfield, and the double team has been shut off now by Virginia, as Virginia has brought two midfielders down, a midfielder and a tagman actually, to shut off the 2-on-1 on the near side of the field. Johns Hopkins has been so successful with in clearing the ball. Long pass in to Sletty. Sletty wide open, now gives it in to Brendan Schneck. Schneck has it checked away by Kevin O'Shea out of bounds. A nice alert play by Kevin O'Shea as he ran down Brendan Schneck from behind and checked the ball out of his stick.
Essentially what Virginia is doing on the clears is letting Federico handle the ball unharassed or unharassed, because they would love him to come across that line. They're playing everybody else very tight. Federico's only pass was downfield, and then it was given off to Brendan Schneck, who was very closely played by Kevin O'Shea, All-American defenseman, checked his stick very nicely, and now Virginia's back on the move again.
Brian Gregory twirls once, doesn't see any pressure as Bidney drops off, decides to bring it up and try to create his own 2-on-1 on the near side, does not do it. Now gives it to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll still not out of trouble, breaks clean as he gets by Jimmy Zafuto. He goes in, Driscoll gets in, he can shoot it from there. Instead, roses it off to Matt Reynes. Reynes has the ball checked away. Rolling loose, picked up by Driscoll. He's wide open, he can come across the front of the crease, but a nice job by Dave Black. Black checks it away. The Hopkins defense sliding very well here, and Black's on his way downfield. Johns Hopkins with a fast break. In quickly to Jeff Harris. Harris decides to settle it down too far out to make the pass back towards the goal. He settles it down and allows Johns Hopkins to substitute on the fly.
Once again, Hopkins deploying that 6-man defensive unit and substituting, content not to have that fast break, and it really does take away the fast break.
Brendan Schneck, Henry Ciccaroni, and Joe Saletti in on midfield now for Johns Hopkins. Ciccaroni with the ball, picked up by number 7, Rich Riccardi. He gives it back out to Brendan Schneck. Johns Hopkins has 2 men on the crease, Saletti and Jeff Harris. Schneck's open now, comes clean. He wants to fire. Instead, it puts it back behind as Zafuto. Zafuto looks back out front. It gets by O'Shea. O'Shea goes right. Zafuto fires. Hits the pipe top of the goal. And a nice shot by Zafuto. Bounces off and rolls back out front. All day long, Kevin O'Shea has tried to go over Jimmy Zafuto's head. That time, Zafuto beat him, but couldn't put it in the cage. Schneck now pressuring in, coming up to fire, and scores! What a beautiful screen. We talked about the screen. There was Saletti and Zafuto standing right in front of the goal. Gregory never saw it.
And Bob, I'll tell you what happened. That ball bounced off a player's shoulder in there and went in the goal. The goalie had it measured. It hit a player coming in there and jumped in the goal. And that's why the save was unable to be made by the Virginia goalie, number 3, Brian Gregory. Looked like he had it measured all the way, and it bounced off one of the players and went in.
Johns Hopkins now leading 5-3, 9:57 remaining in the third quarter. As the Johns Hopkins fans in their familiar chant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we want more. Kraus trying to control the offense, now picks it up. He rolls back in towards the Johns Hopkins goal. He'll settle it down and give it off to Matt Reynes.
Bob, I can't remember a cleaner game either being played. Only 2 penalties that were personal fouls so far this game.
Ray Justo with the ball now. It's a nice pick set by Lou Rowland, but Justo doesn't use the pick. Now comes back out front. He'll fire. It bounces off of the back of one of the midfielders for Johns Hopkins and rolls back towards the end line, picked up by Caravana, and Greenberg checks it out of bounds, and it goes back over to, we see the referee reverses himself. It will go over to Johns Hopkins. Greenberg doing a real good job on Caravana. Caravana's only goal today coming on a broken play situation when Mike Federico threw an errant pass behind the goal.
And Freddie Eisenbrand, chief referee with us, the USILA. Freddie, are these championship games easier or harder to referee?
Well, Joe, as you know, the pressure is always there, but these are two top teams. There are no cheap shots or anything like that. This is a class game, and you'll find a lot fewer penalties. I haven't filled up a page yet.
That's Freddie Eisenbrand, the chief referee of the USILA, the head official for the United States in lacrosse.
University of Virginia brings Matt Rainis and Randy Natoli, two attackmen, up to shut off the 2-on-1 on the near side. So they go to Greenberg on the far side, does Johns Hopkins, and they clear the ball. Greenberg now looking for some help, and there's Jim Bidney, as Bidney is always available to give you some help on a clear if you need it. Bidney holds it for a moment while everybody gets back. The defensemen all get back on one side. The midfielders come over on offense, and Johns Hopkins will try to widen their margin. Johns Hopkins now leading 5-3, 8:40 remaining in the third quarter. Ciccarone over to Wayne Davis. Davis playing with an injured shoulder. He separated his shoulder back early in the season as the ball is thrown out of bounds over top of Jimmy Zafuto. I'm sure Henry Ciccarone Sr. not at all pleased with that effort.
You know, Bob, Virginia has been in two close games, not all year, just two close games we looked at Ace Adams in the NCAA playoffs. We mentioned earlier they defeated Cornell in sudden death overtime. Their second game was against North Carolina, which is also a grudge match for them because North Carolina was the only team that beat Virginia, and they went to overtime with them. And just to give a little setting on that game, Virginia was down 2 goals with 5 minutes to go and managed to tie it up. So 2 goals for Virginia is nothing. Still in the third quarter, Johns Hopkins on top, 5-3 as Virginia clears.
Crisp passing by the Virginia defense has that ball cleared as they get into Rich Riccardi. Riccardi now settles down, gives a look to Sonny Esposito, doesn't give him the ball. He'll give it off to Johnny Driscoll as Driscoll walks in slowly from the midfield line. Driscoll picked up by Leroy Katz. Driscoll not doing much today as he's being shut out by the long sticks of the Johns Hopkins defensive midfielders. Driscoll now pulls out. He's going to reload and try to get by Leroy Katz. Comes back right. He can fire from there. Does. A nice save by Federico. Federico kicks it back out towards the far side. Now Federico in big trouble out of the goal. All the way on the far side. They try to get into Matt Rainis. Rainis looks in and shoots and scores! Matt Rainis with a shot from about 20 yards away. Brings the game back to within 1. Johns Hopkins 5, Virginia 4, 7:34 remaining in this quarter. Federico made another error, Joe, 2 in this quarter.
And that's the second time as we watch it coming up again that they've been scored on while Mike's out of the goal, and it seems like that's almost the only way as we watch it once again. Firing at a naked goal, defenseman in there, but he's no goalie, and the ball whisks over his shoulder. And once again, Virginia gets a goal with Michael Federico out of the goal. Mike plays very, very aggressive defense out there. Part of the reason that Virginia's been held down to this many goals. Can't fault Federico for getting out there and playing some good defense. It almost seems like that's the only way Virginia's going to be able to score, to catch him out of the goal, because he's been a tough stopper, as has his opposite number, Brian Gregory.
Ball pops up, rolling towards the near sideline, and Virginia controls. Ray Justo picks it off right in front of the Johns Hopkins bench. And Virginia now sensing a tie game, trailing by 1 goal, 7:18 remaining in the third quarter. Justo picked up by Barney Field, takes Barney Field back behind the goal. He's looking out front. Double teamed, gives it inside to number 4, Lou Rowland, and they have it now back to Matt Rainis. Rainis feeds it, there's a nice shot by Rowland, he scores! All day long. Have Hopkins sag back in, shoot from the outside, and Virginia has tied this game 5-all, 7:02 remaining in the third quarter.
And if you were with us at halftime, you heard Richie Moran say, as we watch this goal again, and let's watch, Richie Moran said, you got to have some movement, you got to make Federico move. That's exactly what Virginia's doing, taking the ball around the horn, making Federico move. They'll flip it back inside, and there's going to be a beautiful goal fired here through a screen, and the ball dances under the right shoulder of Mike Federico, a left-handed goalie, and right then, Virginia ties it up 5-all. Bob, we've got a barn burner here today.
The championship game, and championship teams are playing, and I tell you. Ball rolling back, controlled by Kraus. We told you how awesome Kraus was in the beginning of the game a bit on facing off, and that'll become a major factor as this game winds down if it remains a close game.
Johns Hopkins sorely missing the services of Ned Radeball. sick today, sick last weekend. He's their face-off man, and right now Virginia has controlled the face-offs, and they've gotten themselves back in this ball game after trailing 4-1 at halftime. It's 5-all, 6 minutes and 38 seconds remaining in the third period.
Ray Justo being picked up by Joe Saletti, trying to drive Saletti back inside. Gives it off to Matt Reynes. Reynes had the assist on the last goal scored by the University of Virginia, picked up by Dave Black. Looking inside now, Lou Rulon pulling back out as Reynes still tries to get by back. He's got him beat and get his hand on the stick, and he's checked and held, and that'll be a penalty probably against Johns Hopkins. We look inside, it's a Dave Black called for a hold, Joe.
That'll be a 30-second penalty, and as we remind you, we'll see it coming up once again. Dave Black holding. Let's watch here. There's some question as to whether Reynes is warding off. See his hand fly out there, and the Virginia fans, or the Hopkins fans, think he's warding off. Black is kind of hamstrung here, and he's going to whap him under there. That's a holding penalty, not a slash. That means it'll be 30 seconds extra man for Virginia. Virginia's third extra man play today. They've been very ineffectual on extra man, thanks to the very, very good defense and excellent goalkeeping of Mike Federico. 5-all, Virginia on extra man.
You can look for Reynes to try Dave Black on again when he gets the ball. If they're having success doing it, they'll go back to it. Ball flat with the goal now. Tim O'Shea back to Caravana. Caravana back on to Johnny Driscoll. Back out front to Justo. Justo over to Rick Justo. He'll turn and fire. Knocked down as Lance Schneck anticipates the shot. Picked up now. Justo doesn't get it. Schneck gets it and rolls it back into the offensive end for Hopkins. Picked up by Kevin O'Shea. O'Shea loses it. Still wrong loose. Esposito knocks it back in. Picked up in there by number 34, Mike Sotier. Bidney controls. Now Lance Schneck. Nobody wants it. Pops up in the air 4 more times. Now rolling back, Mike Sotier finally has it, and he'll get over to Brian Gregory, and they'll slow all this chaos down. Now over to Kevin O'Shea. O'Shea looking for a fast break, gets it by Justo, loses it, as Justo now recovers and gives it off over to Randy Natoli. Number 16, Rick Justo in the last series, finally controlling the ball and getting into Randy Natoli. He gives it back to number 32, Johnny Driscoll.
And in that interim, as the clock winds down to 5 minutes and 13 seconds, Hopkins, Virginia tied 5-all in the NCAA Division I Lacrosse Championship. And in that time period, when the ball went down to the other end of the field, Virginia lost their extra man advantage. So now they'll be back to all even. Virginia getting some fresh bodies in there, Robert.
Waiting now as Johnny Driscoll comes back out front. Picked up by Jimmy Esposito. He gives it off to Sonny Esposito. Sonny Esposito for Virginia, Jimmy Esposito for Johns Hopkins. Sonny now driving in on Lance Schneck. Schneck will poke once. As Esposito comes back left-handed, tries to feed to the crease, gets it by Natoli, out of bounds. Derek pass, and Johns Hopkins will go back on offense.
As we said early on in the second quarter, even though Johns Hopkins was on top, the tempo of this game had changed. It was Ace Adams type of game. He's very patient. They played a very controlled offense, chipped away, chipped away, chipped away, and finally it's 5-all. Johns Hopkins and the University of Virginia. As we look down on the sideline, there apparently is an equipment time out there. Looks like Kevin O'Shea, Bob, down on the sidelines. As we look, he has a little problem with his helmet. And of course, there will be no timeout charged with either team. Just quickly, both teams are allowed 2 one-minute timeouts per half. They do not carry over from one half to the other. And while it may be a little premature, Bob, let's talk a little bit about what would happen if this game were to go into overtime.
They would play 2 4-minute sudden death periods. The first team to score a goal would win the game. It used to be a situation where you played 2 4-minute periods, and if there was a team leading at the end of the first 4-minute period, they would go into a second 4-minute period. Now it's sudden death, and the first team to score a goal wins.
Freddie Eisenbrand up here with his chief referee. Just briefly, I noticed you signaling your referees down in the field. What were you telling them to do?
Trying to come over and get the thing moving. For an equipment change like that, they only have 20 seconds to put the ball back in play, or they have to substitute for the player. I wanted them to get over and get together with the fellow having his equipment straightened out.
Thank you. Freddie Eisenbrand, chief referee of the United States Intercollegiate Lacrosse Association.
Federico now. goalie.
A beautiful, beautiful play by Mike Federico. Stuffed him completely. What could have been the go-ahead goal for Virginia. And it's going to be a 1-second penalty. Let's take a look at it. Coming in, Finn on the right, sees the man open on the left, feeds across. Watch Mike Federico come out, cut off the angle. You young goalies, look at that and learn. Came right at, took him high, and after that, there was a 1-minute slashing penalty against Johns Hopkins. And so for the 4th time today, Virginia will be on extra man. Johns Hopkins so far has not enjoyed an extra man play all day long. Looking down the field, Ace Adams, very taciturn coach. He looks like he's trailing by 10 goals when in fact his team has just come from behind, tied 5-5 on extra man. Bob Smith?
Over to Ray Justo. Justo out front to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll cradling once, now back to Justo as they drop down in a 2-2-2. Back behind the goal now to Caravana. Quick feed, Natoli scores! And a beautiful feed. Natoli, all he can get up is the head of his stick. He popped it right into the goal, stick side against Mike Federico, and for the first time in this game, Virginia leads 6-5, 3:15 remaining in the 3rd quarter.
And let's watch it coming up again. He'll barely get his stick on it, a quick stick, and it'll bounce right down. Watch it, just touches the ball, jumps down. Mike Federico really didn't have a prayer. Now it's going to be Johns Hopkins that's going to call a timeout. They're going to try and break the momentum, just as Ace Adams did.
Looking down now, Coach Henry Ciccarone talking to one of the officials, and we can't tell from up here which official it is. As we go into the Johns Hopkins huddle, Coach Henry Ciccarone will try to regroup his troops as they've lost the last 3 opportunities to score, to Virginia coming even from 5-3 to go ahead 6-5.
That ball's on the goddamn ground. We've got to come up with it. We got to have it on offense. You understand? They aren't beating us. You understand? We got to make things happen for ourselves. We're not going to get anything.
And you just heard Henry Ciccarone saying, we've got to get the ball off the beep-beep ground. We've got to pick it up. He's exercised. He's upset with his team. He said, we are not being beaten by Virginia. We are losing the ball game. He's telling them that they've got to get moving. You see, Ace Adams' plan, as he's done so many times before, is to control that ball and really lull the other team. Ace didn't get upset when he was down 3-0 or down 4-1. He played his ball control game. He's gained control of it. Now it's up to Henry Ciccarone to put a little fire in that Hopkins offense. And, Bob, we've got to wonder right now how much the loss of Ned Radebaugh on faceoffs is going to hurt Johns Hopkins, and also Cook, who's been such a great attackman for them all year.
Johns Hopkins has not really shown much offense. We're used to seeing Johns Hopkins come down and roll up the score, foul on the goalie, score a lot of goals. We said they average 16 goals a game. They're not getting the ball, Joe.
They absolutely are not. Virginia has controlled it off the faceoff, and when they do, they're playing that very patient offense, inching. It's now Virginia 6, Johns Hopkins 5, 3 minutes and 15 seconds to play in the ball game.
Kraus controls once again, this time to ensure getting the faceoff. The University of Virginia had Kevin O'Shea, the defenseman, up on the wing against Brendan Schneck. And they're doing a job. They're going to shut Schneck down on the faceoff. Schneck many times will get the ball on the faceoff and roll in for a fast break goal. Virginia guarding against that with Kevin O'Shea. Virginia now taking the ball back by their own goal to set up their clear. Johns Hopkins in basically a triangle. Now they drop back and they'll ride zone.
And you have to credit the Virginia defense and goalie. Johns Hopkins has scored but 1 goal since the 1st quarter.
Brian Gregory now over to Mike Sotier. Sotier does not have any clearing. Now he gives it into Sonny Esposito. Esposito falling down, has Jim Bidney tracking him. And Esposito takes it back for a moment. Now they look inside and they give it off inside to Stevie Byrne. Byrne has it cleared across the midfield line. He looks for help and he finds it to Steve Kraus. Excellent ball movement, excellent passing and receiving.
And there's going to be a timeout,
Cavaliers.
excuse me, Bob, as one of the players ran out of his shoe, David Black, the defenseman for the Johns Hopkins University, and there will be an equipment timeout. Freddie Eisenbrandt is an equipment timeout. How long do they have? 20 seconds, did you say?
It's 25 seconds, Joe. They try and give the player a chance to stay in the ball game, but if he can't get those wet knots untied, he has to be substituted for.
Just quickly, Freddie, while we're watching this equipment timeout, we noticed that Johns Hopkins cannon went off prematurely. Is anything going to be done about that?
Yes, it will, Joe. In the Ivy League, as you probably know, cannons are outlawed. They are very dangerous, and twice in the Harvard game at Hopkins, the cannon went off inadvertently, and the Harvard players stopped.
Rich Riccardi driving in against Marty Bergen. Doesn't find it open. He pulls back out. Virginia's very patient. Riccardi can fire from there. He does, and bounces it over top of the goal. Backed up in there by Matt Reynes.
And what, of course, Freddie Eisenbrandt is talking about is that cannon that a lot of teams employ going off prematurely, causing sometimes the defensive team to assume that there is a goal and relax.
Reynes coming in against Dave Black. Reynes beat Dave Black earlier and drew the penalty. Virginia did not convert that extra man opportunity, however, as Johnny Driscoll is picked up by Lance Schneck. Driscoll now coming back out front, looking for some help. Schneck hounding him all the way, pokes once. Driscoll almost losing the ball. Puts it now back behind the goal to Caravana, and Greenberg all over Caravana. Caravana looking for some open territory, pulls way out front and gives it off to number 7, Rich Riccardi. 1:27 remaining in the third quarter. Virginia leading Johns Hopkins 6-5 in the NCAA championship game. Rulon driving in, can fire again, a low bouncer, scores! Rulon on a sweep right, scores as he beats Federico to his off-stick side, and Virginia now moves up by 2, 7-5 over Johns Hopkins, 1:19 remaining in this quarter.
It's a very, very difficult position for Coach Henry Ciccarone to be in. It's not so much that his offense is unable to score, as we watch this coming up again. It's that Virginia's controlled the ball so much, Hopkins just hasn't had an offense. A low bouncer just squeaking by Mike Federico.
Rich Riccardi with an outstanding shot.
Bob, if I told you that we were 1 minute 20 seconds to go in the third quarter and Johns Hopkins would be held to 5 goals before this game started, you wouldn't have believed it.
Absolutely not, Joe. Johns Hopkins, one of the things they've had great defense, but they have had outstanding offense all season. But Virginia playing patient lacrosse, taking good percentage shots as Krause controls again, rolling loose now back towards the Hopkins goal. Johns Hopkins has been snuffed here today with only 5 goals in 3 quarters. Back over to David Black. Black back to Brendan Schneck, and Schneck's going to try to get it over himself. Wide open is Howie Offit as he gets it to him across the midfield line. Johns Hopkins needs a goal here desperately. Back to Jimmy Zafuto. Zafuto picked up by Steve Burns. Zafuto earlier had a lot of trouble with Kevin O'Shea. Beat him one time and shot, hit the top of the pipe. Now he'll try to get past Steve Burns. Zafuto forcing in, does not have an opening. Nobody open on the crease. Zafuto will pull it back out. Beats Byrne back to the pipe, but that's no good as he's running away, cutting his angle down. Now back a feet across the crease to Bidney, and Bidney scores a backhanded shot. A beautiful play by Jim Bidney as he got the feet right in front of his defenseman, and Johns Hopkins comes back now to within 1 of Virginia. Virginia 7, Johns Hopkins 6, 31 seconds showing in the third quarter clock.
And let's take a look at it again. Coming across, Bidney's going to have a beautiful, beautiful shot. Let's watch it in slow motion. Jumping up behind and over his back. Oh, a beautiful goal, Bob. Johns Hopkins pulls within 1 of Virginia. Both of these teams showing championship form today.
Howie Offit's going to have to do something to get the ball away from Steve Krause. Steve Krause has controlled the faceoffs here all day long for the University of Virginia. What Offit usually does is rake the ball back towards his own goal, but in that case, today, Steve Krause has beaten him to the ball. So Offit's going to have to change his technique a little bit. Krause controls again, drops it back in to Sonny Esposito. Esposito surveys the situation, decides to slow it down a little bit, give it off to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll's going to come back in and try to get by Wayne Davis. Davis sets up just inside the line. Comes back in right. Driscoll now very patiently comes back left. Full fire wide of the goal to the left-hand side as Wayne Davis lost a shoe. And he'll come out of the game as they substitute a midfield defense for Johns Hopkins. There'll be no equipment time out here. Leroy Katz, Marty Bergen, and Lance Schneck coming in to play midfield defense for Johns Hopkins.
A very common occurrence on AstroTurf, Bob. Those shoes stop very quickly as we watch 5 seconds to go. Virginia will probably flip it out front, and they'll be content to stand still with the ball as we end the third quarter.
That's the end of the third quarter. The University of Virginia Cavaliers 7, Johns Hopkins Blue Jays 6. We'll be back in a moment.
Henry Ciccarone reminding his crew, this is the last 15 minutes. I have to feel that he feels a little bit disappointment. He feels that Hopkins is a little bit flat. The air was really let out of their tires by this comeback of Virginia. Plus, it's extremely hot and humid down there. Johns Hopkins, a very tough team. They've been in this championship the last 3 years in a row, have won it 2 out of the last 3, and we see today, Bob, why no one has been able to do it 3 times so far. It's very difficult. As Henry Ciccarone said before, everybody points for us. We're the champions. Everybody looks for us. Everybody thinks that all we have to do is throw our sticks on the field and we'll win. He said this whole thing has come down to one final game, and now it's down to one final quarter. Virginia on top of Johns Hopkins, the final quarter of play in the NCAA Division I Championship.
Facing off that time was Kevin Kiefer for Johns Hopkins, formerly a defenseman. Kiefer pushed into service on midfield faceoff because of the illness of Ned Radeball. However, Virginia controls the faceoff. Ray Justo pushing out against Kevin Kiefer.
Once again, it's not that the Hopkins attack can't score, it's that Virginia has control of the ball, and Hopkins has not seen it on offense.
Steve Krause has the ball poked away momentarily by Lance Schneck. Puts it back out front to Ray Justo. Justo coming by. He's going to be double teamed by Schneck. Gives back over to a nice move to Krause. Krause back over to Caravana. Caravana tied up beautifully. Excuse me, it's Matt Raines tied up beautifully by Mark Greenberg. The ball rolls out of Greenberg's stick, however, as he goes to pass it upfield. But Greenberg on a beautiful slide picked up Raines. Raines coming towards the goal, and Greenberg prevented him from scoring a one-on-one situation. Waiting now for Raines to bring it in. He'll be picked up by David Black.
I've got to feel that this Hopkins defense down there that has literally played all of this ball game has got to be extremely hot and extremely tired.
Ball back out front to Rick Justo. Midfield of Rick Justo, Ray Justo, Rick 16, Ray 19, and Billy Siri, number 24. Rick poked by Leroy Katz. Pulls back out. Gives it over to his brother Ray. Ray back into Billy Siri now. Siri picked up by Marty Bergen. Bergen has him a double team, as Hopkins likes to do. Now they slide back, and Katz picks him up. So Siri gives it back over to number 16, Rick Justo. Justo puts it back flat with a goal to Matt Raines. Raines, who has beaten Dave Black a couple of times, tries him one again, now brings it back behind the goal. Back out front to Rick Justo. Virginia running some time off the clock here, playing very, very patient offense. Schneck poking Rick Justo. Justo decides to take it back out front, and a pass, errant pass gets by Raines, picked up by Dave Black. Black looking for help, finds it in the person of Bidney. Bidney always there to help out in the clear. He's picked up by Mike Sotier, and Bidney will slow it down while Johns Hopkins gets the defenseman back in on the bench, and offensive midfielders in the game. Kevin O'Shea tries to go over Zafuto's head, doesn't get him. Zafuto back out front looking for help, doesn't find it, as the defense slides very, very well. Mike Sotier helping out on that, as Zafuto came clean behind the goal. Sotier slid on him and drove Zafuto back out front, and we have a horn now, as it's going to be a bench penalty, we believe.
And I think it's going to go against Johns Hopkins. We'll have to take a look. The reason I say that is that one of the Virginia players is clapping his hands together. There's an illegal procedure call, and maybe it is going to go against Johns Hopkins, an illegal substitution. So a big break for Virginia as Virginia gets the ball back on offense again leading 6-7. And Freddie Eisenbrandt, what constitutes stalling in terms of the referee telling the team that they've got to get the ball into that box? When do they make that decision?
Joe, stalling is probably one of the most obvious tactics that you can possibly see. You can sit right here in the box and watch the game, and you know when stalling is in. And consequently, that's when the official gives them the warning.
And of course, just to explain that rule, when a team is detected for stalling or real slow play, then they have to move the ball. As we watch Virginia clear, they have to move it into that yellow outline box and stay within there. Now, if they can keep the ball within there and play kind of a four corners offense, then it's perfectly all right as we watch Virginia pretty easily clearing across the midfield line. Bob Smith?
Johnny Driscoll brings it in, gives it off to Sonny Esposito, in turn gives it off to Mike Caravana. Caravana tries to run Greenberg into a pick. Greenberg gets back through it. They put the ball back out front to Esposito. He gives it over to Rich Riccardi. Now back over to the far side to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll picked up by Leroy Katz. Riccardi breaks across the middle, doesn't get a pass, however. Driscoll hangs on to it, comes back out front. Doesn't get a shot off. Nice job by Katz, poking him just as he was about to shoot.
Virginia playing very, very deliberate offense now. They're not going to even think about taking a shot unless they've got a good shot on goal. And we're going to watch for these referees. I think pretty soon they're going to have to tell them to get into the box.
Esposito now with the ball outside of the box, the attack box. Lance Schneck waiting for him just inside the line. Esposito dances a little bit as he brings it in. Rosies it off to Riccardi. Riccardi not an area to shoot from. Now fires. A nice save inside by one of the defensemen. Batted outside. You got to control the ball. You're in serious trouble. Riccardi knocked down. Picked up by Driscoll, and he scores as he beats Federico stick side. And Virginia now moves out on top. 8-6. 11:38 remaining in this game.
And Bob, that's a tough move for a defenseman. He doesn't know whether to hold that ball in his stick on the crease and try and clear it out and run the risk of getting his stick checked out, or whether to flip it out. And that time, as we watch the ball being flipped out into the midfield after the shot, he left it wide open. Let's take a look at it. Here's a shot. Ball out in the midfield, being flipped around. Watch Driscoll coming in behind after the ball's flipped up. Very opportunistic. and the ball being flipped into the goal by number 32. Very opportunistic goal there for Virginia as they go up 8-6. And Bob, with goals as hard to come by as they are in this game, that 8-6 lead must look like a mountain to Henry Ciccarone. Smiling Driscoll on the bench.
Steve Krause controls once again. He has been awesome today on facing off. As Krause pushes down, no fast break. Johns Hopkins sets up well. Now he's seen Natoli break clear and shoots wide of the goal to the right-hand side. One of the defensemen for Johns Hopkins looked the other way or went to sleep for a moment, and Natoli saw it, broke clear towards the goal, and took the shot.
And they're going to call that a pass, and I think it sure was a pass. I think the referees were absolutely correct on that. Bobby Sandell, and the reason that you know it was a pass is number 13, Matt Reynes, had his stick out looking for the feed. That was no shot on goal. Referees called it perfectly correctly. Johns Hopkins will be awarded the ball now, down 8-6 after they enjoyed a 4-1 halftime lead.
Mike Federico brings it up and gives it over to Greenberg. Greenberg now back to Federico. Virginia has shut off the 2-on-1 clearing, the offside clearing by Johns Hopkins. It's been very successful for him all season. Virginia shuts it off by bringing 2 attackmen up to play the 2 midfielders. Now Federico brings it across, trips a little bit as he comes over the midfield line. And we have an offside as Greenberg also went over with him. And Johns Hopkins looking a little ragged at this point, trailing 8-6 with only 11 minutes and 5 seconds remaining in this game. Once again, loses possession of the ball.
Henry Ciccarone extremely upset by the bad breaks that are going his way. It's so difficult for Hopkins to get possession of the ball because they haven't been winning the faceoffs. And when they do get possession, they hate to lose it on a little turnover like that. Virginia, on the other hand, when they get the ball, control it forever.
Open man, Billy Siri right in the front of the X at the midfield line, gets the clearing pass easily. And Virginia once again will go into their deliberate offense. Back behind the goal to Caravana, back out front to Siri. He turns and fires, a nice save by Federico. Federico looks out for a quick outlet pass, finds it over here to Lance Schneck on the near side of the field. Schneck knows he can't outrun Randy Natoli, so he puts it back to Dave Black. And once again, Johns Hopkins will try to get back on offense.
And look for Henry Ciccarone to quickly get those offensive midfielders in there and clear it out. And you know who he wants to handle that ball, none other than Brendan Schneck. And you can bet your bottom dollar they're going to get that ball to Brendan Schneck, and he's going to take it right to the cooker if they can get it cleared. Once again, they're going to leave Mike Federico alone. They want him to clear the ball. Federico's standing still. That's perfectly all right with Ace Adams. Time ticking off the clock, 10:20, 10:19, counting down.
Black has it cleared now, gives it over to Henry Ciccarone Jr.
And they're trying to shut off Brendan Schneck. They do not want him to get the ball. Schneck being dogged by number 24 for Virginia.
Billy Siri. Ciccarone now going in against Rick Justo. They have a big screen set up in front of the Virginia goal. Ciccarone has to come back out front with the fire, and the ball bounces wide of the goal to the left-hand side. He was pushed a little stiffly there by Rick Justo. The crowd let out kind of a roar, but the referees correctly called it no foul. Ciccarone fired left of the goal, off the screen, backed up nicely in there by Jimmy Zafuto.
As we look at Brendan Schneck, he's going to be the man of the hour. He's going to be the one that Hopkins is going to have to look to.
Zafuto now coming out front against Byrne, pulls back front. And Byrne hooks him a little bit, but Zafuto manages to control the ball, gives it out to Henry Ciccarone. Hopkins a long way from the goal here, about 21 yards. The distance between the top of the box and the goal, 20 yards. As Brendan Schneck tries to get past Kevin O'Shea, a flag coming out into Ciccarone. Ciccarone fires and scores on a beautiful feed off the double team by the Virginia defense. Brendan Schneck with a great assist, Ciccarone with a great goal. They move back within 1. Virginia 8, Hopkins 7, 9:31 remaining in this game.
And just as we said, Brendan Schneck has got to be the man of the hour. He came in there. Well, let's take a look at it now. He's going to draw 2 men, and with that, Henry Ciccarone Jr. is going to come wide open. Schneck's going to come back left-handed, flip the ball off, and here it is. He draws a foul. It's a holding foul, which will be erased by the goal. Henry Ciccarone draws Johns Hopkins 8-7. And Freddie, let's have an explanation of that.
That was actually a slash when Schneck cut back, Joe. The defensive player 17 caught him right across the arm there. There's an obvious slash. It was a good call.
Now, Freddie, just a quick explanation. Will Johns Hopkins get the ball on extra man, or will that be erased by the goal?
Well, it'll be a face-off, Joe. And of course, if Virginia gets possession and gets it into their goal area, the man in the penalty box will be released.
Freddie Eisenbrandt, the chief referee in the United States, tells us that that foul will stand. It is, of course, a personal foul, which survives the goal. A personal foul does not. It would go away with the goal. But a slash there, which means that Johns Hopkins will have an extra man. But in order to utilize that, they'll have to get the face-off. So right now, it'll be Virginia, a man down on defense. They're permitted to bring that man up to face off, but he cannot cross over the line. Very important for Virginia to win the face-off, to maintain the momentum. Very important for Hopkins to win it, to get the extra man.
Steve Krause gets away from Brendan Schneck. He'll roll in. The minute he steps in the box, the penalty's over. Johns Hopkins will have no extra man opportunities to get it off to Randy Natoli. In on midfield now for Johns Hopkins, Rich Wilkins, Craig Cook, and Brendan Schneck on midfield for the University of Virginia. Number 20, Sonny Esposito. Number 14 is Randy Natoli driving back in. He's not actually a midfielder, he's an attackman. They have Steve Krause in. As Esposito comes clean and fires the bouncer over top of Mike Federico. And they'll rebalance the midfields now as Virginia has an opportunity to get men on offense and Hopkins men on defense.
If you've just joined us, Joe Hart along with Bob Smith, we're in the fourth quarter of the NCAA Division I Lacrosse Championship. Johns Hopkins' 4-1 halftime lead has been erased. It's Virginia on top, 8-7, 1 second short of 9 minutes remaining in this game.
Mark Greenberg will pick up Mike Caravana at the end line as play begins.
And there's Ace Adams, member of the Hall of Fame, former Johns Hopkins alumni, ahead of his former team, the head coach at the University of Virginia.
Rich Riccardi gives it off to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll outruns Dave Black to get the ball out back in front. Wide open is number 13, Matt Reynes. A great save by Federico, but a bad pass. Federico controls once again, picked up by Lance Schneck. Schneck takes the ball back behind the goal, looking for help, doesn't find it. He'll give it off to Federico on the far sideline, and Hopkins escaped the ball at that time. Or dodged the ball, I guess is the saying, Joe. Back over to Federico once again. Johns Hopkins substituting on the fly, getting Brendan Schneck back in the game. And I wouldn't be surprised, Joe, to see Brendan Schneck play most of this remaining 8 minutes. Joe Saletti coming in also, as Johns Hopkins rebalances their midfield to go back on offense if they can clear the ball. They've had a little bit of trouble clearing the ball here in the second half. Virginia with almost an on ride. They come down, Caravana comes down on Mark Greenberg.
Virginia content to let Federico bring it up.
Greenberg now a little bit of trouble, gives it off to Dave Black. Black needs some help, and he finds it down here in the corner in the person of Jeff Harris.
Now let's see if they go to Brendan Schneck again.
Schneck will be picked up by number 9, Steve Byrne, a defenseman. Holds the ball momentarily while his other two midfielders come back on side. The Johns Hopkins defenseman bringing the ball down on the offensive end, get back in on defense.
And believe it or not, this is just what Ace Adams wants. He wants Hopkins' offense to be one man.
Schneck coming back in, gets a double team off the crease, but can't find an open man. Now gets to put the ball back behind to Bidney. Bidney far side over to Zafuto. Zafuto dodges past his man, wants to fire, scores! It's a tie game! Johns Hopkins 8, Virginia 8, 7 minutes to go in this ball game on a beautiful move by Jimmy Zafuto.
And Hopkins showing a tremendous amount of discipline, resisting the temptation to go to that one-for-one play as we see Brendan Schneck unselfishly giving the ball off so Johns Hopkins can go into their team offense, the offense that has won them so many championships. And Zafuto, the man of the hour now. Not the high score on the team, but the most important score at that time as he defeats the Nets 8-8, Johns Hopkins, Virginia. Robert, I have not seen a more exciting NCAA championship game ever.
An excellent game, an excellent game. Facing off this time for Johns Hopkins will be Howie Offit. And we have to wonder how much longer Steve Krause can go. He's almost indestructible, Joe. I think he's faced off every time but one for Virginia today.
Well, there's no saving it for the dance. This is the last game of the year, the 1980 NCAA Division I lacrosse season, and it's still undecided. 8-all, 7 minutes and 15 seconds remaining.
Lance Schneck overruns the ball, as does Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll now, Steve Krause actually recovers. Krause is checked away. The ball still being held out. Picked off by Jeff Harris. He controls as he gets past his defenseman. There'll be a hold call probably coming up as Harris pulls back out.
Harris will get a free shot in here if they take it.
Bidney quickly off it turns, and that'll be the end of offensive play until they go an extra man.
When I said a free shot, what I meant, of course, was that since there is a delayed penalty, they would have an opportunity to take a shot on goal and get the ball back. Freddie, that was a technical foul. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. He reached around with that arm and got him with a hold. It's one of those sneaky little defensive plays. Sometimes it works, but the official was right on the play, Jim Garvey, and he picked it up.
And so Johns Hopkins, with 6 minutes and 52 seconds, will have the ball on extra man, and they'll have an opportunity to regain this lead in the game.
The extra man offense, the first time we've seen it today for Johns Hopkins, unbelievably. Craig Cook, Rich Wilkins, Mike Donnelly, Brendan Schneck, behind the goal, Jim Zafuto on the crease, Jim Bidney. Zafuto with it now, back out front to Craig Cook. Spudo tries to sneak, doesn't get it up. Brendan Schneck back out front to Wilkins. Wilkins loses the ball, it's checked away. Wait to see whose stick it went off of. It'll go over to Virginia.
And that's a feed off of the stick off of the stick of number 26 in there for Johns Hopkins, Bob, and it looks like Virginia will have the ball. So they have thwarted Hopkins on their extra man play, and right now it doesn't look like the extra man plays have really been a factor today.
Virginia will have to try to clear the ball 5-on-6.
You know, Bob, most of the goals in lacrosse come off of unsettled situations, and when you have two very well-coached teams that play team offense and play team defense, you don't see too many unsettled situations, and that's why the score is as low as it is.
Driscoll now trying to outrun Lance Schneck. Schneck trying to shut him off. The penalty's now over as the man runs in for, with Mary Caravana goes into play for Virginia. And they'll have an all-even situation as Sotir can't control. The ball bounces back right in the stick of Lance Schneck. He gives it off to his brother Brendan and hustles out of the game. Waiting now to see who Johns Hopkins puts in. Brendan Schneck holds the ball, and they bring in Henry Ciccarone Jr.
And Henry Ciccarone Sr. is standing on the sidelines making sure that his players go in through the box, something that's normally a task normally handled by an assistant coach. Henry Ciccarone can't afford the turnover now, so he's taking the gloves off, getting right in there and making sure everything goes right.
We'll see now Jimmy Amon, the assistant coach, has come up to stand by that box. Johns Hopkins called 3 times today for illegal procedure in getting men into the game. Brendan Schneck now pushes in, draws 3 men, but not completely, so he hasn't got anybody to pass it off to on a double team. Instead gives it off to Henry Ciccarone as Ciccarone pulls out front. Schneck once again will try Jeff Peters. Coming in, driving back in. Now feeds across wide. Beautiful shot by Harris. Gregory said, look what I found. Is Harris quick stick that right into Gregory. Gregory reading it, though, very well. The ball now kicked back into the Virginia end of the field. And it's going to go out of bounds. Wait to see who it falls off. It kept out in play by Brendan Schneck. Picked up by Mike Sotir into Jeff Peters. Peters into Sonny Esposito. And Virginia's going to go back on offense. Virginia with a 5-on-3 coming down. Esposito to Caravana. He doesn't handle it. The ball knocked down loose. Picked up Caravana, he loses it again right into Bidney's stick, and Bidney will control.
Bidney very wisely controlling the ball. It's an all-even ball game, 8-8, 4 minutes and 48 seconds.
He gives it back to Zafuto now. Zafuto gives it off to Jeff Harris. Harris has a midfielder on him, Johnny Driscoll, and this is what an attackman likes to have. He gets that mixed matchup on a change of ball. Now Driscoll wraps him once. Harris going to take Driscoll back out front, try to roll on him. He's going to be double teamed. Doesn't see a double team come by Kevin O'Shea, and that's when your teammates aren't talking to you. The ball now bouncing loosely as Sonny Esposito can't control it. Mike Sotir trying to pick it up. He'll settle it down, and Virginia will use a great deal of discipline on this clear.
And Ace Adams, I know, would love to have another timeout. He doesn't want to use that one he has left, but he'd love one now just to hold that ball. 4 minutes and 6 seconds remaining. Johns Hopkins up 4-1 at halftime. Leads changed hands a couple times. It's now all 8-all, Johns Hopkins and Virginia in the NCAA championship game.
The bounce pass to Ray Justo. He's still not out of trouble, though, as he's running himself into a double team. Picked up by Zafuto, gives it over to Mike Sotir. Sotir now a long pass back to Kevin O'Shea, has to get by Jeff Harris. Harris now pressing down on him, so he gives it over to Brian Gregory. 3:39 showing on the big scoreboard clock here. It's all even. Johns Hopkins 8, Virginia 8.
And in close ball games so far, we're going to have to give the edge to Virginia. They got here by playing an unprecedented 2 sudden death overtime games.
Johns Hopkins riding on down on the defensive end of the field. They're on all the attackmen as we see number 4, Lou Ruin, come open. He's rolling in towards the goal, not checked. We have a call coming up. And we've seen this how many times this season, Joe, where the coach kills his own fast break by calling a timeout. What has probably happened, though, is Coach Ace Adams says, if we get the ball, I want a timeout. So once Ruin got the ball rolling in, didn't make any difference because they were going to have the timeout called anyway.
You know, Bob, you remember a couple of years ago when I was coaching in the club game, and we ran into a referee. Thank gosh it didn't hear us call for a timeout, and the defenseman was coming down, fed the ball off, and scored as we go down into the huddle.
Bobby Page. Bobby Page. Bobby, you wrong. Start on the crease. That's 35 on you. Listen up. We got Ray, we got Ricky, we got Louie in. Bobby, start on a high crease. Rotate behind. Mike, invert to the crease. High post. Bobby, we got you behind the cage. We're going to let you invert on the guy. You got him, take him. If you're not, move the ball to the midfield. Michael, keep him moving. Your high post, Matt, keep your man moving. 3 minutes, let's go.
That's assistant coach Bruce Arena. He's no stranger to this field. He was a two-time first-team All-American for Cornell. He's calling for an invert, and of course that means the midfielders go behind, the attackmen come out front. He's looking for a high post, which means a pick off of the crease, and you can bet they're going to try and hold that ball as long as they can, Bob, before they take that shot. 3 minutes and 18 seconds remaining in the NCAA Division I championship game. Coming to you from Ithaca, high above Cayuga's waters at Cornell.
The man you heard him talking to, Bobby Page, a midfielder who has not seen action today, comes into the game with 6 goals and 7 assists on the season. Bobby Page, number 5, will be setting a high post. As you can see, standing almost near the restraining line. Waiting now for the ball. He whistled back in play. Ray Justo will bring it in. Justo now walking in slowly against Lance Schneck. Now you see Bobby Page push down and go back behind the goal, and Mike Caravana come out. They give it off to Page. He's picked up by Howdy Nicholas. Page forces out front as they cut down and come off the pick. Page doesn't find anybody open, gives it inside, tries to get it inside, however, to Caravana, and that play goes awry. Mike Page probably not really warmed up coming into the game. The errant pass getting by Caravana, and Johns Hopkins will have possession.
Ace Adams, perhaps the coolest coach we've ever seen in tight situations. I'm sure that he's going to have to go up and stock up on some Mylanta or something for his stomach at the end of this NCAA series. He's just been cool and calm as a flat ocean.
Federico now over to Henry Ciccarone as Johns Hopkins tries the 2-on-1 on the far side. Does not find it open. Now he do find it open as Joe Saletti gets open and drives in down the far sideline. He'll settle it down and give it back to Ciccarone.
It's going to be a shame that either team is going to have to lose this game, Bob. They both come here with 1 loss apiece. They are clearly 2 of the best teams in the country. They've beaten all the top teams to get here. Still tie 8-all, 2.5 minutes remaining.
Brendan Schneck trying to get past Steve Byrne. Does not draw the double team he wants and gives it back behind to Jeff Harris. Harris quickly over to Jim Bidney. Bidney back out front to Zafuto. Johns Hopkins wants to make sure they don't squander this opportunity to score on offense here, because they may not get it back with only 2 minutes left in the game. Inside to Harris. Harris wide open, has it checked away at the last minute by Tony Savarese. Foot race now between Ciccarone and Kevin O'Shea. Ciccarone trying to rake it back towards the other goal. And now it's picked up by Stevie Byrne. He has it checked away. Joe Saletti controls. Saletti looks out for help, finds it with Howdy Nicholas. Nicholas trapped near the midfield line, gives it off quickly to Zafuto, and Johns Hopkins breathes a sigh of relief. Had Harris been able to get that shot off, he was wide open in front of the crease as he cut the crease the last time. He took Brendan Schneck with the ball.
He took an extra crank now, and he's coming over on the sidelines. Brendan Schneck, you know he's the man they want to handle the ball. 1 minute and 40 seconds as you watch the clock tick down. It's probably the ally of Johns Hopkins right now. 8-all.
Brendan Schneck picked up by Steve Byrne. Brendan Schneck has played attack and midfield this year, probably played more minutes than anybody else in the game. Comes by, Steve Byrne fires, it bounces off the stick of Brian Gregory. He rakes it back towards the end line, does not have control yet. Now he's all right as he gives it back to Kevin O'Shea. O'Shea bounces it once on the AstroTurf, settles it down.
That was some fancy footwork on both players' parts to keep that ball in play.
Back over now to Mike Sotier. Sotier back to Kevin O'Shea. 1:05 showing on the clock here. Johns Hopkins 8, Virginia 8. An exciting championship game. Everything it was billed to be.
Gregory, not exactly the tiniest goalie we've seen all year. Doesn't look like a guy you'd find wearing a tutu, but he tightrope that back line to save the ball in play. Now we're under a minute to go, Bob. The score's tied 8-all. The fans are going berserk here.
It's checked out of Savarese's stick, but he manages to control and gets it back into Rowland. Rolling in. Riccardi rolling in. Looking in front for a feed. He gets it in too.
But there was a timeout called. And the goal will not count. Henry Ciccarone going berserk on the sidelines. Right now it's Johns Hopkins 8, Virginia 8. 43 seconds remaining in the NCAA Championship Division I lacrosse game. And Bob, I think the fans are getting their money's worth today.
A beautiful day, no rain. We flew up through a lot of rain this morning, but it didn't follow us up here, thank goodness. On that last play, Pat Finn came clean on a cut across the crease, got the shot off beautifully. Unfortunately, once again, University of Virginia had called a timeout.
Ball's loose on the ground. Got to get it coming up to our attack. There's 43 seconds. All right? If they go from out front, our guys inside have got to be ready to come when he's inside of 15. And it's got to be through the numbers. No high sticks. All right? Now look, that's right, don't do it too soon.
Hey, Johnny, get back now, baby.
Now look, we get the ball on it clear up to the offense, we'll take a timeout, you understand? All right? Now look, good tight defense down there, it's important. All right? Let's go now.
Head coach Henry Ciccarone calling for a tight defense, but also calling for his men to come out if they start coming in from the outside. But he wants them to come out under control. Don't go too early. No high sticks. By that, he doesn't want any fouls right now. He wants them to come with the sticks through the numbers. And what that means is keeping the stick low, just like you're going to check the player's stick and coming right through the numbers on his jersey. Not a very comfortable feeling for the player that's on the other end of that, but it's very important right now to Johns Hopkins. Virginia in control. They have the ball. A goal now would certainly be a big factor in winning this game with 43 seconds to go and Virginia controlling the face-offs. Let's see what Ace Adams is going to do right now. Bob, I have to feel he's going to hold that ball and go for one shot, if not go into overtime, and we'll explain what will happen if that occurs.
Midfield of Johnny Driscoll, Rich Riccardi, and Esposito. Driscoll comes clean, wants to fire, and at the last minute, Schneck checks it away. Schneck does not control the ball. It's rolling back towards Federico. He has it knocked away, picked up by Federico once again, and a great recovery. Federico in a lot of trouble, can't get loose. It's going to roll out towards the far sideline, picked up now by Jay Black, a long clearing pass, bouncing over the head of the defenseman, back into Kevin O'Shea's stick. 13 seconds showing. They're going towards the goal, looking inside Virginia. Randy Natoli wants to fire, can't find an opening. Now back out front to Driscoll. He shoots wide of the goal.
4 seconds showing on the clock. They'll have a chance for one more shot. You got to believe they're just going to flip the ball out front, and we'll have Freddie Eisenbrand here if this ends in a tie to explain the playoff procedure.
Mike Caravana now picked up by Greenberg, fires in towards the crease. The ball bounces off the crease attackman, John Driscoll, and that's the end of regulation time. Johns Hopkins 8, Virginia 8.
And we'll be back for the overtime right after this. Well, this is Joe Hart along with Bob Smith as we looked at it. Head coach Ace Adams. Time has run out in the ball game, but the ball game's not over. The NCAA championship has ended in an 8-8 tie, and we're going to go to sudden death overtime. And to explain that, the guy that's been with us the whole time, the chief referee for lacrosse in the country, Freddie Eisenbrand. Freddie, what's going to happen now?
Joe, we've had 2 hours of great lacrosse, and we're going to have a whole new ball game here. The procedure it's just been completed. The officials take the captains of the team out to the center of the field, have a coin toss. The team that wins the coin toss selects a goal that they'd like to defend. Then we go to a face-off, which is very, very important at this moment. And the first goal that is scored, that team wins the ball game.
Freddie, now that's a 4-minute overtime period. What happens, let's say I'm Johns Hopkins or I'm Virginia. Let's say I'm Johns Hopkins. I have possession of the ball at the end of that 4-minute period. What happens then?
Joe, it's just like the end of the quarter, only we don't have the 2-minute delay. If they have possession, we don't have a face-off. The ball goes the other end of the field in Hopkins' possession at the same relative distance from the goal, the same relative position, and they continue play until somebody scores.
Well, you heard it from Freddie Eisenbrand, the chief referee of the United States. The whole season for both of these teams comes down to one goal. Freddie, this is, Bobby Smith, this is a situation where Hopkins has a super defense, Virginia has a super defense. Those things should balance out. In terms of scoring, Brendan Schneck seems to be the top scorer in the country, but on the other hand, Virginia has the capability of winning the faceoff. From where I sit right now, it looks like Virginia might have the edge because they've been winning the faceoffs. Plus, they also have been in 2 overtime games. The first time in the history of the NCAA championship, we have had a team coming in here in 3 overtime games. And of course, if Johns Hopkins wins, it'll be the first time ever that any team has won 3 NCAA championships.
Howie Offit's got to try to do something different against Steve Krause. Krause has dominated him today, and we wonder how he would have done against Ned Radeball, the outstanding All-American face-off man for Johns Hopkins, home with a virus, possibly mono, and I'm sure he'd love to be here today.
The whole season down to 1 goal now. Again, we say no matter which team is victorious, they're both winners. They've both played one heck of a ball game today.
Ball placed down. Offit tries to break it out, and Krause controls again. Steve Krause, outstanding face-off man, 5'9", 185 from Garden City, Long Island, has been awesome today on the face-off. Matt Raines now trying to get past Dave Black. He's got him beat. fires wide of the goal, runs into the goal, and knocks the goal back. And they'll have to take a second as he runs through the crease. They'll lose possession. Matt Rain is limping slightly as he ran into the goal.
And Freddie Eisenbrandt, are there any timeouts in sudden death?
Each team is allowed one timeout, which is a change from last year, Joe. They felt as if these kids, especially on a day like today, they need that little bit of rest after 2 hours of tough lacrosse.
And let's watch Reynes going to the goal once again. Flips it off. The ball almost goes in, deflected by Federico. And look at Reynes hit that goal pipe. Thank heavens that they're playing on AstroTurf. That would normally be anchored in the ground if that were a dirt field. And I think Reynes would have been in deep trouble.
Federico now bringing the ball up, calling for some help from Greenberg. He'll give it over to him on the far sideline. Every pass here crucial. Every mistake you make can kill you. 3:19 remaining in the overtime period. Back to Jim Bidney. Bidney over to Schneck. Schneck under a little bit of pressure from Stevie Byrne. Now Schneck will control it. Schneck will play for this shot. Brandon Schneck, the man who's done it all year. 44 goals, 22 assists.
Brendan Schneck, the highest scorer for Johns Hopkins. The whole season rests on his stick right here.
Double, triple teamed. The ball rolling loose, picked up by Jeff Harris. He loses it as he tries to push the Virginia man off the ball. It's rolling back towards the end line. Wait to see what's controlled by Saletti. Has it go off to his stick, out of bounds. Unfortunately for Johns Hopkins, it'll go over to Virginia. Fortunately for Virginia, Kevin O'Shea is going to put it in play with just 2 minutes and 45 seconds remaining in this overtime period.
What a nail biter for both coaches. It's going to take teams a couple days to come down from this, Bobby. Hopkins now going to employ a deep ride, initially sending a man down there to press on.
Jim Bidney pointing to Johnny Driscoll. Driscoll standing wide open between the restraining line and the midfield line. Driscoll with enough speed to get the pass to break down past Lance Schneck and have the ball cleared. Now he sees Afudo sort of split Driscoll and the defenseman on the near side, Mike Sotier. As they get the ball to Driscoll, Driscoll looks for help, gives it over to Sotier. Sotier not out of trouble yet, can't control the pass. Now he does and gives it back over to Kevin O'Shea. O'Shea in a little bit of trouble as Bidney comes on him hard.
Defense showing a lot of cool there.
Long pass over to Driscoll. Driscoll still hasn't got it cleared though. A nice ride. Zafuto's going to try to press him back in, and Driscoll finally gets it cleared.
And now it'll be Virginia on the offense, Bob. Let's see if they take it around or go a one-on-one. I have to think that Virginia is going to try and dodge and give the ball off here.
Sonny Esposito taking the ball back behind, picked up by Leroy Katz. 1:51 showing on the clock. Back behind Randy Natoli. Natoli looking back out front, picked up by Howdy Nicholas.
Still in sudden death overtime. Whoever scores is the NCAA champion. One goal is the whole difference in the season for both of these teams right now.
Natoli coming back out front with the draw, double team, doesn't get it. Now just holds on to the ball. Gives it over to Matt Reynes. Reynes, the young man who had basically an open goal last time and bounced it off Federico. Now you have Esposito trying to come back out front. A quick feed in the crease, it's wide open. A shot, a save by Federico. On a shot by Mike Caravana. Federico looking once, twice, and gives it over. A crucial save by Mike Federico on a great shot by Mike Caravana about 10 yards in front of the goal.
That's got to be a tremendous psychological advantage for Johns Hopkins. Mike Federico showing why he was selected as a sophomore to the first team of the NCAA team. All-American Mike Federico 2 times, bringing the ball up just as cool as a cucumber. This is his last game in the Blue Jay Blue.
Ciccaroni with the ball now back over to Federico. 47 seconds showing on the clock in this period, and they'll go to another 4-minute period if this ends in a tie.
And remember what we were told by Chief Referee Freddie Eisenbrandt, if Hopkins has the ball at the end of the 4-minute period, they will retain possession. There's no face-off in sudden death.
Dave Black now has the ball checked away, rolling back towards the Virginia bench. Now kicked back in as we see number 36, Dave Redmond, called for playing the ball out of bounds. Johns Hopkins will have 25 seconds to get something going here. From a long way from the goal, I'd estimate about 50 yards. And Coach Henry Ciccaroni takes the timeout he has allotted to him for this overtime period.
And when we say there's no face-off in sudden death, that's if one team has possession. If there's no possession, Freddie, is there a face-off?
Yes, there is an automatic face-off.
And so right now it'll be very important not only for Johns Hopkins to go for this shot, but to control the ball if he gets down within, let's say, 10 or 9 or 8 seconds, because what they'll need to do is take advantage of that whole 4-minute overtime. In other words, with 25 seconds to go, they may be ill-advised to take a shot right now. Let's take a look at the Virginia huddle as we see it on screen right now.
Here we go. No pump. Let's set it up. Guys, if we get the ball, we keep possession of it. We have it at the end of the quarter, right? Be very careful. Brian, you got that?
Tony?
Right? Yeah.
You hear Bruce Arena, he's talking very positively. He's not saying go out there and don't let Hopkins score on you. He says when we get the ball, just make sure we retain possession. Like there's no question in their mind that Hopkins is going to score on them. Once again, Johns Hopkins led 4-1 at halftime. And then Virginia got on top. Johns Hopkins tied it up. Still 8-8. The fourth quarter ended 8-8. We're with 25 seconds in the first sudden death 4-minute overtime period. Score is still 8-8 as we're down in the Virginia huddle right now. Ace Adams.
Hold on to it. Ryan. Yeah, he's got ready. Let's go.
Very calm down there, cool as a cucumber, saying if you get the ball, hold on to it, boys. This is the third game in a row Virginia has been in sudden death overtime.
Jim Zafuto will put the ball in play for Johns Hopkins in on offense. As we look at a disinterested spectator at this point, getting a few rays.
One of the topless fans for a topless game.
Zafuto now bringing in against number 9, Stevie Byrne. 21 seconds, 20 seconds showing on the clock. Zafuto will try to force towards the front of the goal and look for someone cutting off a pick set by Bidney. Now Bidney breaks off. Zafuto looks inside, doesn't find him open. The backside's wide open. Over to Chickaroni. Chickaroni dodges once, and he loses the ball as it comes clean. Kevin O'Shea with the ball now will take it back with 4 seconds. They won't try to do anything. They'll just hold on to the ball and get possession. O'Shea now wide open, and that's the end of the first sudden death overtime period. The tie score still Johns Hopkins 8, Virginia 8. We'll be back with more exciting lacrosse in just a moment. We've played 64 minutes of lacrosse here at Sholkoff Field in Ithaca, New York. And the score is still tied. Johns Hopkins 8, the University of Virginia 8. Joe, this game has got me worn out.
Freddie Eisenbrand, you started to tell us a little bit about possession.
Possession, obviously, is very important in this situation, Joe. Actually, if the ball had been loose, there would have been a face-off, but not at the center of the field. It would have been at the relative position at the other end of the field. So we don't have a face-off at the center unless the period ends with that ball in that spot.
Freddie Eisenbrand once again giving us all the official commentary here. He is the chief official. As we look at the clock, that 4 minutes, in case you've just tuned our way, Joe Hart along with Bob Smith, that's not 4 minutes left in regulation. This is the second 4-minute overtime period as the University of Virginia and Johns Hopkins have played deadlock ball here through the first sudden death period. Virginia had possession at the end of the first sudden death period. They will have possession now. Each team has one timeout per sudden death period. The first team to score is the winner of the NCAA Division I crown.
Kevin O'Shea will put the ball in play right at the top of the box. That's where he was when the whistle blew, signifying the end of the first overtime period. O'Shea is going to try to clear this very carefully. He's got Rick Riccardi in the middle of the field. He's got Tony Savarese breaking down across the midfield line. Now Savarese comes back.
Light breeze starting to cross the field, still sunny, a little bit of clouds rolling in. No factor now. These guys are playing strictly on adrenaline. There's no tomorrow. There may not be another minute.
Gary Benninghoff in on the ride, picking up Kevin O'Shea. O'Shea gives it back to Brian Gregory. You can't afford to make a mistake in your end of the field. And Gregory being very careful. Johns Hopkins riding on. As you look back coming this way, Dave Black running down Matt Reynes as Reynes tries to break clear. Pass back now over to Mike Sotier. Sotier picked up by Zafuto, gives it back to Brian Gregory. Gregory and O'Shea have a split now. Rick Riccardi comes clear on the far side as somebody dropped off a little too soon. And Virginia will go on offense. 3:07 remaining in the overtime period, the second overtime period. They give the ball to Johnny Driscoll, and he takes his time, gives it back to Rick Riccardi. Riccardi picked up by Lee Katz. Comes right on Katz. Katz holds him a little bit. The ball bounces loose. We'll wait to see whether they call it a shot or a pass. It's called a pass, and Johns Hopkins will gain possession.
That looked like a bounce pass to me, Bob. He was trying to get it on the crease. Mike Federico showing a lot of cool. Mike Federico now in possession of the ball as we look down on the field. Referee signaling time for the teams to change. And if it were not for Federico, this ball game would be over right now. He stopped a point-blank shot in the overtime period right on goal as we look down at Mike Federico clearing the ball right now.
Federico coming up has a 2-on-1 right in front of him with Pat Finn between him and Mark Greenberg. Finn, however, choosing now Finn drops back. They give it over to Greenberg. Greenberg is pressed by Finn, gives it back to Federico. Federico on a lob pass to Greenberg. Greenberg tries to keep it in. He throws it back in towards the middle of the field. Picked off by Mike Sotier. Sotier quickly over to number 36, Dave Redmond. They lob it back downfield to Pat Finn. Finn is a man open in front of the goal. Doesn't see him as he takes the ball back behind and feeds it over to number 13, Matt Reynes.
Both teams playing very cautiously now as Virginia calls a timeout. A lot of strategy here. Two super coaches, Ace Adams, a member of the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, a Johns Hopkins alumni, Henry Ciccarone, also a Johns Hopkins alumni, also an All-American. Bob?
Coach Henry Ciccarone talking very, very strongly to Mike Federico and Mark Greenberg after they missed that opportunity to clear the ball right in front of the scorer's table. Federico a little anxious to throw the ball to Greenberg, and Greenberg not handling the pass. It went out of bounds, and eventually Virginia got possession. But on the other end going down, Pat Finn had a man wide open right in front of the goal, Randy Natoli, as he brought the ball down the near side. Natoli didn't see, Finn didn't see him, and they blew that opportunity for a quick goal.
Both, as we listen down in the Cornell huddle, excuse me, the Virginia huddle.
Off the post, okay, keeping Randy there, just running Greenberg in circle. Go from your 2-2-2 to a 30.
I'm going, when I go behind, he don't come like that. Screen. Hang him up every time.
Hang him up.
You guys, when you get the ball, look for me hanging my man.
Going to the crease. Listen. Matt, you're rolling up. Randy, you're going to be on your screen. We got Ray and John, and we got Sonny rolling back, and we're in a 30 set. You've got 2 minutes and 15 seconds. You don't have to force it. Just move the ball.
Bruce Arena telling them to move the ball, calling Sonny Esposito's number, Bob. It sounded like they're looking to roll in Matt Reynes on the crease and maybe get a screen.
Matt Reynes said that he can hang his man up between the goal and him. Excuse me, we get the goal between his man and him, and that would be Mark Greenberg. We'll wait to see what happens now. We look, and Greenberg is not picking up Reynes. He's picking up Mike Caravana.
A lot of strategy. Both coaches, excellent coaching staff. Bruce Arena, the reason I said the Cornell huddle, I think when I see Bruce Arena of Cornell, a two-time All-American here at Cornell and a member of the 1974 USA lacrosse team.
Johnny Driscoll now bringing it out front, running right at Ray Justo, roses it off to him. Justo picked up by Marty Bergen. They give it off to Matt Reynes. Reynes back out front to Justo. They slide down now as 2-2-2. The ball back out front to Driscoll. Caravana and Natoli picking each other back and forth in front of the goal. Driscoll tries to pull it and gives it off to Sonny Esposito. Esposito looking back out front, doesn't find an opening. Virginia very, very patient. Long pass knocked down by Lance Schneck. He checks the ball away, picked up by Ray Justo. Justo being hounded by Marty Bergen, however, does control the ball. Back into Randy Natoli. Natoli picked up by Howdy Nicholas. 1:33 showing on the clock in the second overtime period. Justo picked up by Marty Bergen, knocked down, the ball picked up by Lance Schneck. Schneck looks for some help, comes back hard left. Now he'll drive across the midfield line, have the ball cleared. Virginia does not get a shot off on that opportunity. Bidney has control. He comes back in looking for help, and he finds it in the person of Brendan Schneck.
And of course, Brendan Schneck is going to be the man they want to handle the ball. He'll either take it to the goal and try and shoot, or he'll draw a double team and feed off.
I tell you what they miss right here, Joe, is they miss a healthy Wayne Davis, who has one of the hardest left-handed shots in lacrosse. Wayne has not played at all in this second half, and he can really crank it from anywhere from 15 to 17 yards away. As Brendan Schneck starts in against Kevin O'Shea, looks inside, puts the ball behind, quickly to Bidney. Bidney fades the crease, and scores a goal! The game is over! Jeff Harris scores the winning goal on a feed from Jim Bidney, and Johns Hopkins are the national champs 3 times in a row. The first time any team has ever done it. 48 seconds showing on the overtime clock, and Johns Hopkins has gone wild on the field.
And they're surrounding Jeff Harris. Jeff Harris, who had an injured leg, came off the bench when Cook was injured. When Cook's back, put him out for the year. The guy that came off the bench to score the winning goal in the second, 48 seconds remaining in the second overtime period. The Blue Jays have the impossible dream. They've won the NCAA championship 3 times in a row. Let's watch it again. Schneck coming in, puts the ball behind. Where is he? Where is Jeff Harris? He's on the crease. He's waiting. He's standing there naked. He drops it in, and Hopkins wins.
As you hear the crowd chanting, we're number 1, you see the final score, Johns Hopkins 9 and Virginia 8. Looking down now as the University of Virginia, somewhat disconsolate to our left. Johns Hopkins, of course, still completely excited, overwhelmed, as they set up for the presentation of the NCAA Division I trophies. We see Mort LaPointe down the sideline as we still looking at the excited, enthusiastic, unbelievably happy Johns Hopkins Blue Jays.